first of all,
I tried to open the line, but that's
okay, right. So we did. So we're starting the live stream. And first of all, thank you. Welcome to the fraud department. And we're very happy that you guys are here. I'll maybe say a little bit about myself a little later. Who I am isn't really important. It's I don't want to take up time with that. Let's go back to what we were just talking about. I just wanted to make that quick introduction. All right. So the Church of Bay.
Where is it located?
And Bay-isms. Hang on 1 second. I gotta get. I don't close my laptop now.
Who funded this?
The Church of Bay and Bay-isms. See if it'll come up on yours. Beyonce Mass. There's a Beyonce Mass.
It says 2015.
Okay, that celebrates. Okay, it says it celebrates the spirituality of Black women. Who? It's not stop working. What did I just let those?
It's got a website.
Yeah, and it looks like a cathedral.
That's huge.
Womanist worship service. Maybe it's dead. Did I mess it up? What did I just do?
You see this mess one.
Now, and this, this is one of the things that I talk about in my book. You were just talking about cults and different things. Over time in history, there have always been different ideas, different concepts, different, the churches, all the religions have sectioned off and split off. So at any point in time, any one of you can create a ideology, and there's going to be one of the 8 billion people on this planet. Probably a lot of them will have the same feeling. They'll resonate with you, and you can start your own philosophy or ideology at any point in time, and somebody will resonate with it, somebody will follow it, and it'll be a thing. It's not it happens all the time. So the fact that we're now a society that spends more time on social media and kind of idolizes our pop culture icons, and so it kind of makes sense that now we're starting churches behind the people that are idolized. So it's like we're kind of like ha-haing, but it really kind of speaks to how we're moving as a society and where the way a lot of people are going. It's it's kind of scary because like I said, anybody can get somebody to agree with them, somebody to have had a similar experience, and a lot of times they're difficult experiences, trauma bonds and stuff like that. So, you went through this horrible thing, me too, and now all of a sudden we're vibing, we're on this, whatever, and I'm following you to Beyonce Mass. I don't know. Where's the charger?
What it is that they're doing, though. Because what I'm reading, they're not saying that she's any kind of deity. They're using her music and the story of her life as a way to investigate Black women's lives overall, especially as it relates to the Bible, which is an interesting perspective, really. And from my experience with growing up in a non-denominational church, those are the kind of questions that if you ask, it's like, no, we gonna move on. So to have a space that's dedicated to focusing on Black women's realities in that context is actually really interesting. And
Empowering.
I love Beyonce. So if that gets them into a church space, which is also their goal, that's a really good way to bridge a gap and reach people that you probably wouldn't have reached in a more traditional method.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing that comes from that is that it wouldn't have been able to be possible many years ago if you don't have the label of pastor, or you're just not it has to be a church. But now celebrities, or influencers can bridge gaps in a lot of different ways. And that's why influencer marketing is so popular. It's really interesting to see how companies try to take advantage of that. And I think what the thing is we don't really look at too nowadays is they have a different type of responsibility now. You know, it used to just be flat tummy tea on Instagram. You see that, you know, they got the sales.
Oh,
But now,
I forgot about the flat tummy
yeah,
tea.
now people are, especially like wellness products or anything someone's putting in their mouth, putting on their skin, there's a responsibility that influencers have. And we don't really have a method of keeping track and, you know, there's no certification to be influencer. It's just once you get it verified, you're just there. But there's no FDA that has to come. Like, I don't know if y'all are familiar with the pink sauce situation. Yeah. So that's just the example right there. Some people are mad at her, some people are not. I mean, clearly she's just uneducated. There's nothing we can do about that. It's just ignorance. But, you know, it's just unfortunate that sometimes these people get platforms and followers aren't really, there's no back label for an influencer. You just see whatever they post and go from there. But whenever it comes to marketing schemes and stuff like that, especially now, Instagram's like have bots. So there's always a second page that, like, if you follow an influencer, 5 more pages.
A fake page pops
Exactly.
up.
I think
A fraud page.
that also brings up is our expectations for being accountable.
Exactly.
And whether you as an influencer, like how much you have to lean into that, because there's plenty of people who have these followings but also feel like you're following me. I don't need to be a role model. My goal is financial gain. So if you are under my influence, it's kind of a you problem, and I'm going to separate myself from this idea of the influence and the power that I actually do have. But how accountability works is kind of up to what that individual person says. So,
right, because who are you accountable to?
Who am I accountable to?
Kind of like the
and we don't have a system for that.
We don't. I personally
we talked about that.
Don't find myself accountable to anybody but myself and myself.
So if you sell the poison, you know, it's their fault.
Yeah, but I'm more responsible. I wouldn't do that. You know, I hold myself to a high level of accountability, but most people,
it's still your own.
It's still my own. Nobody's regulating that. And it's interesting what you were saying. You know, we talk about the FDA and standards. You know, there's all these standards now, quote unquote, for what we're allowed to put in our bodies and what we're allowed to digest physically, but there's no standard for what we're allowed to digest spiritually and emotionally and what we're viewing now. It used to be when I was coming up, and I'm sure some people, you know, around my time probably, you know, you couldn't see certain. You turn on the television, you weren't allowed to see certain things on TV because you don't just what we're taking in is not just food. Everything you hear, everything you see, everything you smell is being processed by your body. So all these images that we now see on TV, you know, we're receiving that. And the brain doesn't necessarily know that all the time that, oh, I'm just watching TV. We're watching these things and we're having trauma responses to some of the stuff that we're watching on television. And there's like you said, there's really no regulation on all these churches that pop up. And while I do think it's a great, and you know, anything that brings people together, bonds people, helps people to grow spiritually in whatever level. But I have to question sometimes when it says, oh, we're the teachings of the Bible. My first question is, which Bible? You know, which Bible are they teaching from? Is it the 66 book Bible? Is it the Bible with the Apocrypha? Is it the Catholic 73 book Bible or the Ethiopian 81 book Bible?
Or is it just Bible
and the
footnotes?
Yeah, and the problem, the only problem I have with the Bible is not all bad. There's some good stuff in it, but most of the people who find themselves attached to the Bible don't ever go anywhere else. It's like it's the Bible and then that's it. Don't say nothing about it. Don't, you know, don't you dare. You know, and
the generation though too, because some people are more open to, well, it says this, but I interpret it this way. Where, like you saying, with my mom, it says this, so that is what it is, and there's no other.
Very literal,
interpretation.
right?
That's like a standard of being a Christian, though.
Standard.
Like, if you question what this sacred text is, then you're removing yourself from your faith.
But I appreciate that, like the way I was raised and the way I was taught in my school coming up was that you have to choose Christianity, and the only way you can do that is by studying other religions and making a conscious choice. And so we studied Hinduism, Judaism, Buddhism, Islam, and I actually chose Buddhism.
Yeah,
because I was given the freedom to do that, but I think a lot of people aren't, and so they choose Christianity without understanding the full range of spiritual practices or traditions that exist. And so I think that's a different, kind of developmental process. If that's all that's presented to you, then you're not fully making a choice.
That's really good.
And if it's
That's
presented
really
to you
point.
in the context of force or coercion, you just said freedom allowed you to make a decision. You probably were able to take a deep breath before you did it, or take your time. That's the most important thing. But when you're born into something with a certain tone that comes with it, such as
An
a
expectation,
parent, a belt, you know what I mean? There's certain things you just don't do or go to get out of line. And speaking against or questioning is something that's kind of an under the table thing. You have to do it when the lights are
questioning is often considered blasphemy. Like, how dare you?
like it's discrediting.
Yeah, and
because
it's
there's
like,
also fear behind that you're gonna, burn in hell
Yeah,
eternally.
exactly.
Yeah,
Let your
and
child
that's
study
kinda-
something else.
yeah, that's kind of one of the things. I mean, I grew up in a church. I was raised by my grandmother. My mother passed away when I was very young.
Shalom Baptist.
So yeah, shout out to Shiloh. Anyway, so I was raised in a church, and I loved going to church when I was a kid. I mean, I loved it for the fellowship. I got to see my friends and all this. I was probably there, 8 days a week for one reason or another on the usher board, doing this or that. But as I sat there as a very small child, I knew a lot of it was bullshit. Like it didn't make sense. I did not like, and I think as I've gotten older, I've been able to analyze what parts of it that I don't care for. And it's the fear-based, energy. It's the kind of keeps you in like this begging mentality, kind of like, it doesn't allow you to recognize really who you are as a person. Like if I and let me just pause here. If someone asks you, who are you? Who are you? What would you say?
I would go through my personality traits.
Okay.
So
You're the sum total of your personality traits, how you
that's where I would go
act.
first.
Okay.
Yeah.
What about you?
Don't say the vampire.
I'm a blood second.
I would likely offer my eccentricities, just so people can get a feel for who I am and how I am.
Okay. What about you?
I tend to talk about my ancestry and my family ties and where I come from, genealogically.
I'm still figuring it out.
Okay.
See, I know you.
Kind of what Jimmy said, but like I said, I'm still learning, genealogy wise, especially about how we were classified, as what Black really is, and how everybody's not really an African American, and how they lie to us about our history.
So it sounds to me like most of you all classify yourselves or define yourselves based upon who you are here on this planet, kind of under this veil of what we're going through. What you really are, you are an eternal light being experiencing earth in an avatar body. That's what you are. Okay. There's a level of, we all come here, we all have this same energies, frequency. We're all energy. Everything in this room is energy. It's moving energy, just constantly at moving. Being here on the planet, observing all these things collapses it into matter, and we experience stuff and touch and feel and sight and sound. And that's how we're able to, without an observer here to observe, there isn't. You know how they say that? What's that saying? If a tree falls in the woods, does it make a sound? It doesn't. The sound is from the person hearing it. So if there's nobody there to hear it, there's no sound being registered anywhere, if that makes sense.
No. I get what you're saying.
Is that a human hearing it, or any living
Anything,
any sentient being?
anything that can hear it, and just like speaking of who's hearing it, just like with dogs and things like that, they can hear sounds on different frequencies that we can't hear. So
The same as for light.
same as for light, all
Same
that.
as for
But
spirit.
what you are is an eternal light being experiencing earth in an avatar body. When
What
you
philosophy
came
are
here,
you speaking from when you say that?
I'm sorry.
What philosophy are you speaking from when you say that?
It's not really it's not really close. Yeah, probably a little bit of science, a little bit of internal knowing. I guess mostly science. If you look at physics and things like that, it's a science. We know scientifically that nothing is ever created or destroyed, right? So the same goes with us. Our souls are beings. Our soul has always been, will continue on. When we pass on, our soul will go on to some other experience, whether it's coming back here, cycling back here to Earth, or I don't know, going on to somewhere else if you're able to elevate your soul. But I do know it's hard to sometimes break out of or to see yourself as anything but this sum total of your experiences. I mean, it's normal. It's a normal human. That's what we're here to do. We're here to have experiences. But at some point, at a point where you start to ask yourself certain questions, and that's what we try to help people do, is kind of think about how their thoughts are and try to help them break out of this veil that we live under. For a lot of people, the veil starts with religion. If they might live under all of these rules and guidelines and beliefs and everything based upon religion. For some people, it can just be trauma that they experienced as a child. There's a lot of things that,
location.
yeah, geographical location, whether where you grew up. So it's not always easy to detach from that and really see yourself. I think Buddhism, like now when I grew up, so I was raised in a family, being from California, we were all, melting pot. And so I had a family that was multicultural and multi-religious. So my favorite aunt was Buddhist. She was Cambodian and she was Buddhist. So even though I was raised Christian, Baptist, we always went to her house and she had the Buddha and little stuff going. And, so I was always exposed to it. And then when I got to college and started studying philosophy and religion, I also chose Buddhism. And I just kind of I think for me, the reason I chose Buddhism, and I'm not anything now. I don't subscribe to any particular religion. I have some spiritual practices, but at a time when I did, I chose Buddhism because when I looked around at like the different religions and I looked at how people behaved, the Black Christian church is probably one of the worst. It's just bad. It's just bad, and we'll get into why I believe it's bad. It's not even necessarily our fault. But when I look at an example of who I wanted to be like, when I looked at Buddhist people were always very much in control of their emotions and their energies. They weren't trying to fight and tell you what to believe and what to do, and they were just a really good example of. And when I thought about how I wanted to be, that's who I chose. So what was your experience? How did you choose Buddhism? What was your?
I think for me, it was more, I was studying psychology and maybe for some of the same reasons, but I saw it as like a path to happiness and just like emotional wellness. And I didn't see that in any of the other traditions I saw.
Yeah.
It's also like Western Buddhism is very much marketed.
Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah, when I study these religions, I typically go to the source country to study. I've been to all 7 continents. Most recently this summer we went to the North Pole. That was an experience. But I wanted to one thing you said I wanted to pull out was that it was a path to happiness. Religion was kind of created. It's supposed to be a path for you to get on your own spiritual journey, not just the thing.
It's not the answer.
Yeah, and a lot of times, unfortunately, what I see is that people tend to, instead of using the church as a tool to get on their path, they end up start worshiping the church itself. They use the church itself as their feel good, as their source of entertainment, as their place to be somebody, to be important, to have a position, things like that. And so, and one of the general issues that I have with, and I don't think religion is all bad, don't get me wrong. It's just been used and abused and politicized in such a way that I just don't think that people really get what they're supposed to be getting. Like, I don't think that a lot of people go to church every Sunday and they don't leave any better than when they came. They're not really ascending spiritually. They're just coming to dump all their week's bullshit out on the altar, and I don't know, whatever goes on, and then go back the next day to doing their same stuff. So, but
I will say I've seen that in Buddhism too, though, that a lot of sometimes you end up with certain sanghas or communities that are a lot of broken people.
Mm-hmm.
And because of the traditions of Buddhism, you have lineages, and you can, rise in power through the monks, through the teachers. You have a lot of people who collect titles and collect, and I think that that's something that's universal about religion.
Oh yeah, it definitely
it's like
is.
You have to get past that part and develop the spiritual practice for yourself.
Yeah, like for example, if I had a church, I don't want to see you every Sunday. Okay, I want to see you every now and again when you need to come in and get your little recharge. But you should have the tools and the things that you need yourself. Like for example, one thing I noticed in even the church I grew up in. Every time a minister gets ready to come and get on the pulpit, what do? They go back in the back, they get quiet, they meditate, they connect with God, whatever. Why don't they come out and tell you how to go in the back, connect with God, meditate, do whatever? It's because it's a dependency. The modern church has taken the role almost of kind of a parenting energy. And I think now more than ever, we're seeing now a mass exodus from the church, and people are going more towards spirituality and being more autonomous with their own spirituality, salvation, whatever you want to call it.
Let's be specific with the energy, though. It's not just parental, because we talk about using it as a tool. A parent is supposed to be a launch pad for their child to get you connections, skills, and resources to be a better you. But the energy that you're speaking about is a limiting energy that keeps you in your place. And that's what we kind of see sometimes with children, that if you speak to them a certain way, their own subconscious self-esteem is going to be diminished because they feel as if they're subservient.
Like an authoritarian.
Right. But if you give opportunities for your child to speak and to uplift them, make them feel like a superhero, it's all written before they're at the age of 5. So when it comes to being indoctrinated into that parenting position where it's kind of limiting, you're not able to see yourself outside of that role.
Right. And with the Bible, with the parental role, just like with who has kids in here? Who have kids? So, with kids, we decide what they can handle and what they can't handle, what's appropriate for them and what's not. And that's what the church has done for us. Is they've decided what they've given us. Even I think during slavery time, they had the slave Bible, which was just a few good verses that we were to, live off of. Even in the Catholic Church, the Catholic priests and stuff, they had their Bible, and then they had the Bible that was in the pews. We weren't able to, I don't know, I guess we weren't smart enough. We weren't.
The entire library.
Yeah, and so now you've got people going, prior to some of these ancient texts, going all the way back to because the Bible was really just rewritten. The Bible is not all wrong. It's not all just false. It was rewritten from some older ancient texts that science has now and archaeologists have now uncovered. Science has now kind of, unfortunately, what's also causing a mass exodus from the church is that science has now caught up with some of the fraud that's out there and in the Bible. But just to piggyback on what you said as well, is that the church should be a launch pad. It should, spiritual centers should be a place for you to get a jump start, because the truth is, your spiritual path is very personal. It should be between you and your creator. It's customized. So when you're so die hard in the church, that's all you can see. That's the only tunnel vision you have is the church. Then you're just following somebody else's path, or the path that somebody else laid out for you.
What were some of y'all's experiences? How did y'all feel your relationship was fostered and how it developed over time?
Yeah, like I would like to know how you were brought up as a kid, like what your practice was as a kid, and where are you now? and why, if you want to share that.
Okay. I was brought up in a Pentecostal church.
Okay.
So,
That's where I go. That's where I go when I want my good praise and worship. Because I still do go to churches here and there. Like I go to Vision Cathedral sometimes, but I like the Pentecostals because they got the good. Yeah.
Okay.
Yep. They got the good praise and worship. But yeah, go ahead.
that too. But yeah, since I was a kid, I was forced to go to church. They just did what my parents told me to do. I didn't really question it. I did hate going to Sunday school. I thought it was a waste of time. But I was in the church at least 5 days a week. Revival, Bible study on Tuesday.
And did you say to yourself as a kid, "Oh, when I get to be an adult, I'm not doing this"? Or
it was more so, not really, because my mom, she's a minister now. My dad was a deacon. Well, he still is a deacon. So now, where I'm at now, I'm not in the church because as I got older, I saw myself leaving, but I didn't know why I was leaving the church. And now, like you, I was like, okay, there's a lot of stuff that we were lied to about. Like everybody interprets the Bible differently. So, and my mom still preaches to me and tells me, she's very demanding and authoritative on her beliefs. So we don't really go into that conversation.
just kind of stay away from that. Yeah.
But I'm on my own journey now. I'm still a student. I'm still learning.
You'll always be.
Yeah.
It's definitely not a destination. It's a lifelong journey. What about you?
Went to Catholic school, Baptist mom, Protestant dad, and I'm nothing now. I don't claim any religion now. But even as a child, it just didn't make any sense to me because everyone in these 3 institutions that I was in kept telling me that the other one is wrong. But you're sending me to Catholic school, but you're telling me they're wrong. I'm just here for the education. And then we're going to this Baptist church, and Baptist is telling me that everybody else is wrong. And then if my dad happened to feel like going to church, we would go to the Protestant church, and they're telling me that everybody else is wrong. So I had a problem with grasping any of you make any sense because you're all wrong. You're all right.
Yeah, you're all right, and that's okay. Like everybody can be right. We can all be right without anybody being wrong.
Right. So I
That's
subscribe
the
to
truth.
formal religion.
Okay.
I will say that I'm interested in learning more about the journey of spirituality, but I haven't really gotten interested in subscribing to religion. And my mom being a diehard Christian, I still can't wrap my head around African American descendants from slaves believing in Christianity who didn't come from Africa with Christianity.
That part.
It was
That part.
There it comes. He's like, okay.
I don't discount anyone for their beliefs. I think having a belief is actually a great thing. I think it helps elevate your mind, calms you, like I said, a path to happiness. But I just can't subscribe to one thing at the moment. And I just can't do it. So,
Okay.
So I'm learning.
Can I add something what she said? Religion.
So let me change my answer. Hold on.
No, I just want to say I also came to the conclusion that religion was created to divide people and confuse them. So, and all the Bibles are actually related to each other. They're just different.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. They all say the same thing. I mean, ultimately, all the ancient texts, the Quran, the Bible, the Bhagavad Gita, all the major texts, they all pretty much say the same thing. I mean, I know the current Bible was created by the Romans back, maybe about 1,000 years after. I think it was the final compilation was done about 1,000 years after Jesus had died. Quote unquote, if he died. But we won't go. That's another topic. It was great. It was just political. It was purely political. And I mean, and let me ask you this: for those who did grow up in the church too, how many of you actually have read the entire Bible? No. Okay.
I had to.
Yeah. I went to jail one time. For just I've read it. I read it in jail. I'll go ahead and just put that out there. Like that's where most people get their, you sit in jail, you gotta dig in, you gotta go in deep. But anyway, go ahead. How did you grow up and where are you at
I was raised in a non-denominational church.
Okay.
My mother was raised Catholic, and so that was a space where she could still exist. She felt like she could still exist there. My dad was more spiritual, which I didn't really have a good understanding on for many years. But for the most part, when it came to encouraging individuals to have their own relationship with God and work on their own interpretation of the Bible, the pastor as a whole was encouraging on that. It was more in the children's spaces where it was more controlled, because you are working with developing minds, so they do want to impress a certain rhetoric. So that's where I experienced the most challenge when I did have questions.
You felt like your questions were, you were like, they were trying to silence you, like.
Oh yeah, that's absolutely what it was. 100%.
Or like you're too young to be asking questions, like go sit down, kind of children are to be seen, not heard kind of thing, or.
Yeah, that's absolutely what it was. So, I mean, in that way, it was very oppressive. But because that was a foundation, I never necessarily saw myself separating from it. When I came to Atlanta, what separated it from me was the plethora of Baptist churches that were immediately available, which is very much so not what I was used to.
And where are you from?
I grew up in Tennessee.
Tennessee, okay.
Yeah, near Nashville.
Okay.
I moved here in 2012.
Okay.
Yeah. So there's plenty of Baptist churches that just, for me, it was like, oh, this is a dry experience. I don't like this. And so that's what caused my personal separation. Not that I didn't necessarily, not that I rejected anything, but I also at the same time, and I think this does come from my dad's side of just being very tolerant and spiritually open to a lot of things. At the same time, I noticed, what you were saying before, like there's a lot of commonality between these texts. Like we can't all
be mad at
be
you.
wrong.
Right, yeah,
It's all the same thing. And
That's all
so after my real, I guess, awakening was after I read the book called The Egyptian, which is a historical fiction, but it's really about this man who becomes a surgeon for the pharaoh, and religion guides a lot of the politics there. So he was able to see how rituals contaminate a religion.
Mm-hmm.
And so when I think about like the conversation we're
Because
having,
they're man-made.
yeah, when I think about the conversation we're having, what the problem really is the rituals that people apply to religion. That's where we get.
And they think that's all they have to do too.
Right, and I think that's all they have to do. There's really no like personal work done. But when you leave it up to people, we usually corrupt something.
Mm-hmm.
So I mean, religion is not saved from that.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, it's a movie.
Yes, that's the book.
Yeah, and I don't think we were necessarily. We have someone we follow that does a lot of research and actually goes and reads these tablets that they find and all these texts, whatever. And his theory, and one that I'm kind of pretty much on board with, is that the God of the Bible, like there is a God, right? Of course, there's a creator and all that, but the God of the Bible, he believes is actually the devil. That
Everyone has been hoodwinked and bamboozled.
pretty much, yeah.
And that
We might need to play his thing too.
that
He explains it so well that it's almost like, okay, well, like, because I've always felt like my impression of the Bible at the end of the day, because I used to always sit in church thinking like, well, what, and I wasn't necessarily exposed to a lot of religions as a small child, but I just remember thinking to myself, if this is the only way, what about all these people? I just remember thinking, what about all those people in remote places that don't even speak English? Like, I just was like, I was like, they're just SOL. Like, that was the part for me that immediately kind of shut me down. And I think my school of thought, if I had to pick a school of thought, out of the ancient philosophers, the Stoics believed that when it comes to logic, if you have truth and you have truth, nothing can come from that but truth. If you have truth and something false, then the outcome could be true or it could be false. just like with positive and negative numbers. When you multiply two positives, you always have a positive. A positive and a negative is probably going to be it's a negative, right? Yeah, let me.
Math major.
Right. But
But when you're saying truth, what do you actually mean? Like, what is the standard for determining what's true and what's false?
So truth is not something that, and this might be a whole nother topic, but the nature of truth, like just like we were saying before, this religion can be right, they can be right, we can all be right. We don't have to, nobody has to be wrong for us all to be right. So the nature of truth is the sum total of everything. Truth is not something that we'll ever actually know the sum total of because we're here inside of it. Kind of similar to how you'll never really be able to see your whole body because you're inside of it coming from your eyes. I mean, you can see a reflection in the mirror and you can see parts of it at a time. Those parts of it that you're seeing are truths, different truths. The sum total of you is the whole truth, but you'll never see the whole thing at the same time. You can see different parts here and there. You can turn, you can look, you can take pictures in the back, but you'll never see your face. You can't, you know what I'm saying? Your eyes can, you know what I'm saying? You can only see so much. So truth itself is something that we'll never really know. Now, we all have different truths. We all have different, even sitting in this room, you're looking at everything from this direction. So what you're seeing is different than what she's seeing. And we're all sitting here at the same table. So I don't know if that answers the question, but it's kind of
No, I'm still it doesn't.
Okay, what's okay?
Because I was
What was I
trying
saying
to
before?
follow your what you were saying about the Stoics, right?
Oh yeah. Oh, I'm sorry. Okay,
So-
yeah.
so
So
what
when
is
it comes,
true?
I'm sorry. Okay, yeah. So when it comes to when you study like logic and proofs, like if this then that,
Yes,
and
I have.
things like that. Okay, so the Stoics believe that when you have proofs, if you have out of like for example, we'll just take the Bible. So the Bible has a lot of truths in it, but it also has some false in it. So for me, when I'm going into something and trying to interpret, trying to understand, I'm going to immediately reject the whole thing because I already know that part of it's not true. So for me, if any part of it is false, throw the whole thing away. That's kind of when I'm trying to determine what it is that I believe and how I'm gonna operate, what I'm gonna operate based off of. A lot of people operate their whole lives and their whole being off of this book. And for me, I think I think it's a mistake. And I think it's a disservice
A
to
lot of people
oneself.
operate that way under the perspective of pick what's relevant for me. So,
And that's fine. That's fine if you're only doing that for yourself. But then what happens is, and what's kind of a theme throughout Christianity is that I'm not just picking things for myself. Now I'm going to tell you what you can do. Now I'm going to say you can't get an abortion if you get pregnant. I'm going to say this is wrong because of what's in this book. So it's like it's a slippery slope, and it's dangerous to cherry pick in that way. And unfortunately, Christianity is the one religion that has been used, like I said, politically it drives, even though there's supposedly a separation of church and state, there isn't. I mean, you can't, because there's no separation from the people. And so it just becomes really dogmatic, where it's like, okay, if that's what you want to believe and that's what you want to do that, be that. Like I've got a friend of mine that she understands that there may be some whatever in the Bible, but she's been able to take what she's been able to take from it, transmute that energy, get something from it, grow from it, and that's fine. Do that, but don't push that on me. Don't push that on her. And she's not a lawmaker. And that's the problem when you have lawmakers, you have people in positions of people in positions of power that
have that particular perspective. I think both Christianity and Islam, probably you could argue, been
Oh, yeah.
used in that way
Yeah.
as tools. And I think there's another book that I read.
I mean,
a few
to me,
years
all
ago.
religions have been used as that type of tool.
Well,
at
some are more like
at some point in
evangelists
time.
than others.
Yeah.
And kind of more imposed on.
Yeah.
You know,
Some of
but
the
I
newer
think-
religions, the what I call the baby religions, you know, the ancient religions, your Buddhisms, your Hindu and stuff like that, they're a little bit more mature, a little bit more evolved.
They
They
kind
don't,
of just live and let live.
they live
kind
and
of
let
thing.
live. They, you know, it's like, this is here, but we're not trying to force it necessarily on you, and you. And we were going around, what's been your experience?
Oh, I have a church foundation.
Mhm.
I did grow up in a church that was Baptist, but I didn't really understand what that meant until I was probably a teenager. I think getting to know people as I've gotten older, it seems that I had a different type of experience because the pastor that I grew up under was very heavy in the arts and then also pushing us toward education
Okay.
and researching things and encouraging us to ask questions so that we could explore and even find out what the other
So you had a good
denominations did.
experience in that area.
I had good experiences, yes. But I've heard horror stories, and I think for me, my resounding question is, it sounds like people's parents put them in church. So for me, my question is like, why would do your parents not realize that this is an experience that they don't have to put you through, and why would they put you through that? Because for me, the commonality is people, like regardless of the text and the religion and the practices, people make their decisions. And even like as you were speaking to having like putting people in that like child position to say you can't do this, or you don't have the authority to do this, or you can't ask questions, or stay in your
You don't
place,
have
that
the
kind of thing.
understanding to do
Right,
certain
but
things,
that's I think earlier we were talking about accountability, like that's a people thing. I don't think that's specific to any particular religion,
Mhm.
but it's like if we were talking about cults also, it's like if your parents grew up in a cult, at some point I'm hoping they get to the realization that like, oh, this is a cult and I don't have to subject my children to this.
Yeah.
So why is this something
Or
that
drink their
continues
blood.
to get
Well, you know what?
Sacrifice.
I was watching some series on occultism, on cults, and a lot of the common theme in a lot of cults, like the real, cults out there in Utah and all those places, the common theme is child abuse.
My point exactly.
That is child molestation, child abuse. These kids are out here having babies at 12, 13, 14 years old, getting married to, and the leader's got one leader, and he's got all these wives and whatever's going on. But yeah, I think when I was forced in at church, even if I was sick in the first aid room, the little first aid room. Like there was no, I could count probably on both hands the number of Sunday services that I missed or whatever. But now when he grew up, I didn't force it. Like we went to church, and a lot of times it was his choice.
And I ushered. I still served.
He participated. He hung out, and sometimes he would come to me and say, "Mom, I want to go to church," and
Yeah.
so we
She
would
was
go.
falling off before I
I'd be like, really?
I was craving it.
Okay.
But to speak back to what you said about But to speak back to what you said about if you had a church and you don't want to see all these faces there every week, when you go on a ritualistic basis, because weeks, appointed times that we all agree on when the Gregorian calendar, where Eastern Standard Time, we met here at 8 o'clock, right? So when you're subjected to that, to give context, you get dependent upon that. So you need to check your calendar in order to be relevant in alliance, what do you call that? In alignment with everyone else. Because if you're not on the same time, you won't be able to be appointed or held accountable. So when you go somewhere every week for a reason that you really haven't defined for yourself, it just becomes a dependency. It's just like doing a drug to heal from something that you don't want to deal with personally.
Right.
You just get dependent upon something that's just
It's filling a void. It's filling a need. Just like I think you said that you kind of stopped going or didn't want to go to church because it was a dry experience.
Dry.
It was a dry experience. And so, and that speaks to the, why you were going. Some of it, like for me, when I go to church now, I definitely don't want a dry experience. I like to go, like I said, I go for some good praise and worship. and just to kind of
Feel the energy,
feel the
physically.
energy and whatever. But I'm not going somewhere every week to do what.
To get election.
Huh?
I can go to Georgia State and go take some more
Right,
classes.
yeah, like, I mean, I do my praise, I do my little whatever and dancing and different stuff that I do every morning when I get up and at my house, and I do my own stuff. Sometimes if I'm feeling down, I just want to be around some good, some uplifting energy. But other than that, that's it. I'm not, I don't want to be where I need that every week. I want to be where, hey, if some stuff's going on, things are going on, I just need to go get a little pick me up, just go feel the spirit a little bit.
But at the same time, the word does tell you that you shouldn't just go when you're down, and you shouldn't just go when you're up. It should be both. So I think that mentality is
Which word? We on the word? Wait, where are we going? Wait, what are we doing? Hold on.
Only one word.
I'm not gonna say the word. I'm gonna say the what do you call that? The quote, the status quo.
Okay.
Of that, if you're not showing up every week, it's like, oh, now you want
The expectation.
You see what I'm saying? So it's not just about.
I mean, it's a membership. I mean, at church. I mean, at my church, it is. I mean, the black, especially black churches. Like, I really can't speak on how all the churches operate and function, but it's a membership.
Are
you
Are you a member
of Vision? I believe I am still. Yeah. I joined maybe a couple of years ago, like the beginning of 2020. So yeah, technically, I guess technically I am still a member, but I haven't been since COVID. I was gonna go one Sunday, but they talk about we're back live. We pulled up and it was online. They weren't there. They weren't there. They had a fake service. They had a fake service. They were broadcasting the service as if it was there happening live. They were in the church recording. I thought they were there. So, anyways,
I've gotten to a point where, probably like you were saying earlier, like for me, spiritually, I think God is too big for any one religion.
Oh yeah, for sure.
But I do recognize that socially, like these are social institutions. These are communities.
It's an industry. It's really an industry.
I mean, all traditions, they have this social component, and they help you deal with anxiety. I think they are like anxiety management systems because they help you deal with uncertainty and give you like rules to live by.
And it helps you recognize that I'm not alone.
Right.
You're going
so
through
it's that
some
connection,
of the same
and that
stuff.
is valuable. That's valuable. So I can't discount that for people. So I think that's why a lot of people continue to want to put their kids in there because they don't want them to be ostracized or to feel disconnected.
And feel like they're left worse off than everyone else without it.
Yeah,
they don't
because there's social capital in that.
Exactly. That's true.
And being connected.
Just like a lot of people in my family. So my grandfather, my step grandfather now, he's a Q, and anytime you're in college and you come around a Q, they ask you when you know what I'm saying. It's a vibe, and it's like there's nothing wrong. I'm not saying there's anything wrong, but I understand my personality, and I understand where I thrive, and I understand. I'm not gonna say my tribe because I don't have one yet, but forcing myself into a hole that I may not fit into isn't, the best thing for anybody. So I feel like it's just the same way. And it's almost peer pressure that I feel. Not that I feel like I'm any close to joining, but it's like the energy that I get from it is a certain type of way. And I feel like Christianity is a little bit similar, or just black organizations. You know what I'm saying? It's kind of like, even in the hood, you look at someone that may have a mental disorder and has not been diagnosed, we call them out, and they're kind of just, the laughing stock, bye Felicia, you know what I'm saying? It is what it is. We don't take the time to address the individual. We just address the symptom, or we just address what we see on the outside. You know what I mean? But bro, he's tweaking because he saw someone get shot, you know what I mean, when he was 5. Well, he never had anyone to talk to because it was his parents. So, now he's just an orphan, and he's in your neighborhood now.
He's not getting any therapy or
any love. No one's coming to him out of love. They're coming to him out of fear, or if it's the police, it's controlling. They're trying to, subject you, control you, put you in a box to keep you away from the rest of society. It's never in a.
They don't have time. They don't have time for all that because they're on the struggle, trying to hold it together.
Let's talk about this. We were talking about lawmaking. I think the biggest thing that we don't. They tried to do it like the defunding the police situation was make it about removing police presence. But what it was about was taking some of the money that they're getting and putting them into other forces or tasks that are more tailored to society. Because now we have a lot of sick people outside. So we have to have different agencies for different people. We just put everyone under the criminal investigation agency or the Federal Bureau of Investigation. we need a different set, like just like they have a terrorist section for people that are extra violent. You know what I mean? We don't have a section for people that haven't been properly diagnosed or assessed. And I don't want to use diagnosed because a lot of times that's clinical labels that they put on. But at the end of the day, there has to be an evaluation of some sort. You know, just talking to a person is an evaluation. Understanding what their mind frame is. This is an evaluation. You know what I mean? It looks a little different depending on what setting you're in. But when you only see someone in one setting, it gives you a very limited frame. And it's very dangerous, especially when we give people all the power, such as police, to do whatever they feel is necessary. They have a gun because they are able to enforce whatever lethal force they need to in order to protect us all. So we have to put our protection in a diverse set of hands that are more formidable in different areas. I think just making the police deal with everything is so scary to me because, you know, I look at police with empathy. They see a whole lot of crazy stuff in a day, and every situation is different. You never know what type of call you're getting. So it's just, I feel like that was a big thing I saw politically that I didn't really like. But, you know, that's just how politics are. They have to spin a movement to make it something that really isn't valuable. But how do y'all feel about that?
For defunding police, I think they just used the wrong terminology.
Exactly.
And we went with it. They should have said, wait, we need to change this. It was the same thing with global warming. It was, oh, why did they say that?
Right.
So now it's climate change.
Right.
It's no that, but you notice they're saying defund the police because they really don't want to do that. But when they're taking money from education, they don't talk about defunding education. They don't say it that way. They say it, yeah,
budget cuts.
Yeah, budget cuts. It's called budget cuts. Then,
That's
yeah.
bad
It
branding.
just needed a better brand to
Yeah.
it. Once they saw that the brand wasn't working, they should have went another way with that.
I think
Yeah.
that speaks to connotation. So whenever you put something like Black Lives Matter on a T-shirt, it has a connotation to it, and that's why it was as successful as you want to say or unsuccessful. You know, I guess that's subjective, but we see what's happening now. That's obviously a crazy situation.
I mean, so Black Lives
well,
Matter.
the organization. I'm talking about the organization.
Has it been successful? I mean, there's this movement. There were a couple years ago, I think pre-COVID, just before COVID, there was a bunch of marches. There's a bunch of, what did they do?
What was the measure of success for that?
That's what I'm asking. I don't know. I don't know. I personally
Because I feel
don't
like
know.
as Black people, we're the most diverse group of people on the planet. So it's hard to just say what we deem successful because everyone feels different about it. That's why I left it open because, you know, some of y'all may be in the organization.
I mean, maybe it's just to bring awareness, you
Of
know?
course.
I mean,
But the fact that we have to start at that level, we matter.
like, please stop killing us.
Right. And it's so,
Yeah. I mean, I don't know.
That level.
it speaks to the state of the union. As they
I think that part of the problem too that I had with Black Lives Matter, or not a problem with Black Lives Matter, but part of why I feel like it wasn't as successful, and also part of the reason why I feel like the Black community in general is not as successful with some of our initiatives and the things we want, is that we tend to lump everything under the same umbrella. Like there were a lot of instances where, no, you got shot because you shot at the police. Like, you know what I'm saying? There were times where people died, and I did not feel like it should have been attached to the Black Lives Matter movement because they weren't righteous victims. They were out there doing things to get themselves shot. You know, and even in the Black community, what I see a lot of times happens is we want like racial justice, we want some things to change there, but we throw the race card on everything. So it's kind of like you're not, you know, when you just like that parent that's always yelling at their kid, the kid starts tuning that out. They don't listen to that anymore. It's like if you're not selective and targeted with your agenda items, nobody's really paying attention anymore. You know, it's kind of like what's that term? I can't think of it. I hate when I do that. When you cry wolf, it's like, you know, like when a person's constantly crying about something, it's not really that something, nobody's paying attention. They're just kind of looked at like, oh, here they go again. And I feel like that's kind of where we've landed ourselves as a community. And there's a lot of things that out there that aren't racially motivated, that aren't, you know, but I don't know if it's partially because of our trauma, partially because of our experiences, and I just feel like we are not, as a community, we're not taking it seriously anymore. You want to say something?
Well, I challenge that it still probably is racially motivated. Going back to what you said about seeing the whole person versus the situation. So yes, maybe that person did shoot up the police first. Maybe that is the case. But the larger systems that are at play that cause that person to get to that space are very much so racially associated. So it's all the same umbrella in that way.
Yeah, I think the situation we're in, I don't think we landed ourselves in that situation. We were already here. We're just trying to fight to have some equality, whatever we want to call it. Economic liberation is the only real way that's going to happen. But when it comes to such a news clip that goes viral, right? It's usually going to have to require death. Someone's going to have to die in a traffic stop. But if like you said, the cause.
It's got to be something so ridiculous to actually get attention.
The cause of him being pulled over may be racially motivated, but if he had any level of potential for causing the incident, then the entire situation is credited. Like, y'all can't be that mad.
Like it was racially motivated. They pulled him over, but when they pulled him over, he had warrants. So, like, you know what I'm saying?
So
and he ran.
Right.
So we had to shoot him.
So I think what you were saying was then us having to then cry out and then try to defend this person and his family. We're so far behind. We're just,
and then we look crazy because all they do is come back and that's what they always want to do to us. They always show like, what was it? We abandoned, we boycotted some newscast because it was like, this man died. He was shot up in a parking lot. He was a victim, a 100% victim in this incident. But then he wanted to talk about his criminal background. And it had nothing whatsoever. It was that guy on Channel 2. Yeah, but anyway, that's how they do. It's almost like we have to, just like, you know how they say in the workplace, we got to be twice as good. Okay, we got to walk the line twice as, we got to just really be on the straight and narrow. Otherwise, it's just like even what I was telling you guys earlier about the battle with Morehouse, and doing all that stuff. I don't think we would be as credible if he wasn't a 4.0 student. You know what I'm saying? If he wasn't getting straight A's, like if he had any,
or if they could look at my name and find a mugshot. Because that was a situation. What they did was they did it. You know how so.
You can tell me this.
No, I'm saying if they could find a mugshot.
I was like, wait a minute, what now? What's going on?
Right? To relate it back to the news. They went to the what do you call it? The shopping plaza where he died, and after they said a family is raising a GoFundMe for his funeral because obviously they're impoverished, they're not gonna be able to pay for it. And this is what they said. Right at the end, the last little 5 seconds, after we did more research on the victim, we found he was convicted of blah 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 blah, and he was a felon. And then that was it. That was the last thing you heard. So before you're even gonna pull out your
now who's gonna donate to his GoFundMe for his funeral?
Right. So imagine if after y'all can watch the clip later, but it's like a 2-minute WSB clip. After the clip you watched with me, they said all these great things about me, but at the end, he was caught with trafficking marijuana on I-20 in 2017. Yeah. So it's just like, well, he's not perfect. So, but that's what the news does. We either are parading someone that aligns with our agenda or completely discrediting somebody just because we disagree with one piece of the topic. I think that's the one thing.
That's a media problem as well.
Of course.
Like about me. If they portray it as if white people don't commit crime, they'll post up the serial killer, and everybody's like, oh, okay, well, serial killers are white, but that's okay. They for every
let's give an example. A white man kills his family, and they don't post the mugshot. They post a picture of him with his family, and they're like, "Oh, how sad it is!" Like I'm sitting there, like,
yeah,
right.
But they post our mugshot.
Mental health challenges.
We're always criminals, and they're always
right. Yeah, that's a good point. They always, with white people, they always talk about their mental health. With black people, they talk about their criminal history, and they never talk about the mental health.
And that comes with empathy, just looking at the entire person. And I think what we see now is, and I feel like it's kind of sucks for some of our gatekeepers, I feel like, that are up there that hang out. I'm not gonna say hang out with white people, because that's a very general loose term. But when you're dealing with the white people that have a platform, and you're dealing with black people that have a platform, let's say someone like Charlamagne God. You see what I'm saying? So when you have someone like this that is supposed to be a spokesperson or is supposed to represent the whole, which is no one is. I don't feel like I should be. I don't feel like anyone should represent the whole. I feel like there's subsections that maybe could be appointed, but there's no one, even though I may look like him, I may not represent his views effectively in front of the
We're not
public.
a homogenous group.
Right, especially not consistently 100% every day of the week. So when you have situations like this, and sometimes you'll see other communities be like, well, why are they still complaining? Well, why are they still, they don't understand the full person. They just see, well, we're all living in the same experience. I'm in America today, you're in America today. Why does it look so different? But when you understand DNA, when you understand genetic inheritance of memories, experiences, feelings, not being able to swim is a big deal. I don't have that experience, but I'm like, man, if I was really scared to swim, I feel like I would be so limited. I wouldn't travel as much. I wouldn't enjoy doing certain things. So I don't know if y'all have had any experiences like that, even just being nervous around white people. If that's something you've experienced, that's just a testament to something you can't see. You can't see that because it's something that's in your DNA. It's expressing yourself. It's expressing every day. When your hair starts changing colors, you can't see that. That wasn't a choice. That's DNA just expressing itself as you get older. So I feel like a lot of people don't understand that. And even if they did, they don't want to take that into account when it comes to our experiences because they're so diverse.
Right. And just like you just said, we're not a homogenous group.
We're not.
Okay. So,
and we want to act like we are.
So if we're not a homogenous group, why are we trying to do all this uniting and trying to have this,
because we're so far
this
behind
agenda together? Should we just be kind of just focusing within?
But we're treated as a homogenous group.
Right.
And,
so that's the only way we can respond.
Well, yeah, asterisk. We're mistreated as a homogenous group. So we have to have some kind of unity to even have the force to fight back. Because it's on an individual level, it doesn't work if you don't have the numbers. But we're like at the same time, when you talk about like representatives of the community, we're not a homogenous. There's so many ways to be Black, whatever that we decide that means in this moment. So like to even have people to speak on the Black experience, and on the other side have people try to learn from that or navigate that or decide, well, they're saying they're complaining too much, or maybe they've already gotten more than they actually deserve. Like all those things just constantly rub against each other. There is no true space for like the individual person to live fully at home.
So yesterday I actually went to a pitch competition that was taking place over on Peachtree Road, and I was volunteering as a representative of Morehouse College, and there was some Georgia Tech students there. So there was this girl, and maybe she looked this African girl, and there was another white student, and I think two others. But I remember I was overhearing a conversation, and they were talking about. I heard them joking, and she was like, "Oh, now you're about to do the ask a Black person a racial question to get context." And it was so funny to me because I'm looking over there, and I'm like, I know she's had a completely different experience because she probably wasn't born here, just based on how she spoke. And now she has to represent me, and I'm standing over here. You know what I'm saying? So to me, I was just like, and it's not dangerous on that level, although it is. That's a school, that's a community where we're still underrepresented. There's not a lot of Black kids going to Georgia Tech right now. But you have influencers, and you have something like Instagram, where that's something that everyone has their eyes on, and you get someone like you said, Charlamagne, that gets to speak on his experience and maybe experiences that he's heard from stories. He's dealt with a lot of Black people, but he's dealt with Black people that have an image. He's dealt with Black people that have achieved some status. So when I feel like you're doing that representing, it gets so misjudged and misguided. It just
because white people on the radio, white people doing things are looked at as individual white people.
Normal.
They're not. But anytime a Black person gets up on any type of stage, that's representing everybody. The collective.
Anyway,
that's the kind of the fate of the minority in any group.
Yeah, and then like what you were saying earlier about you can't live fully and wholly. That kind of struck a little something. I mean, it's like they're forcing you to be Black too. You know what I'm saying? Like you can't just You can't just go like get up in the morning and just do the things you want to do and go out there and do whatever because
We
you're
have the
carrying
rhetoric of
this.
the black card. Like there
Yeah,
are
you got to go out and be black too.
behaviors to be
Like
black or
I don't
not
know,
be
it's a
black.
weird. I don't know. It sounds weird even saying it, but it's like this thing you carry because if you don't go out and be black or do the things that black people do, then even within the black community you get ostracized. Oh, that's the white girl. Oh, she's doing this or she's not doing black things. You're not black. So it's like all this pressure. The white people are looking at us like we're all a collective. Then the people within are like, if you try to be outside of this pseudo collective, then you're labeled this other thing that nobody wants to be labeled.
I think that's a problem.
How do you win? How do you?
Problem within the black community in general.
Yeah.
I mean, that's why we can't. I hate to say it, I don't think we'll ever come together as people like we should.
It would be
Because,
What's the black community?
That part.
well,
I think
let's say
that-
melanated people.
Okay, I'll say
the melanated
black
people of the world.
because that community, that word in general, there is no black community. It's just black people living.
Black people.
And we're so heavily,
But
and we're so heavily
I feel
integrated.
like
Black people.
I feel like that was the whole point of like the Pan-African movement, or like
Are
that
you
whole.
familiar with Dr. Umar?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
I'm not good answer.
Tell us what your interpretation. What is the Pan-African movement?
I mean, I think it like right now is considered pretty dated.
Mhm.
But in the 60s and 70s, I think that.
Oh
was
no,
the
you can go right over
idea.
here to the Shrine of the Black Madonna
Well,
right now,
and they still
get you
keep that
some-
alive. But
Oh yeah, they're
online
I've got,
now.
Okay, I was like,
yeah, I got some a mentor, one of my godmothers. She's heavy in the shrine.
But it was the idea of like, yes, we are different people. I mean, across the African diaspora and the continent, and obviously here in the States, we are different people. We have different experiences. There's different ways to be black, and yet what unifies us is, the experience of being black,
the struggle.
the African ancestry. Well, there's the struggle, but even beyond that, there's African ancestry and certain universal cultural principles that apparently we share. And so I think
apparently we share.
Things like respect, like when you think of like African worldview in general, like respect for elders, respect for ancestry. In many cultures, yes, but
we
like
have to have the
across
context that many
even
cultures
things
derive
that have
from
traveled
African
with us
culture
across
first.
the
So,
African diaspora that I think stand in contrast to like European individualism and like some of the things that we've encountered here. So things that make us stand apart that we brought with us from our different, backgrounds. And so I think the idea of uniting across all those different identities and cultural contexts to strategically like fight for our interests as Black people wherever we are in the world is the idea behind Pan-Africanism. Yeah, and so that, yes, within that, because we're taking responsibility for defining our identities for ourselves, we can create that space to be individuals and recognize like what unifies us. I think that was the idea, and what it's gotten kind of caricaturized into is like the Hotep movement. You know what I mean? Where it's just
the Hotep.
turned into a joke.
One time for the Hoteps. The Hoteps, and Lord Jesus.
And so I think that's
Okay.
like the kind of
The Hotep movement. I don't even really know what that was. I know I kept hearing people call Hoteps. I heard like anybody that was quote unquote woke was a Hotep. I
but
don't
I think
know.
even in that situation,
I don't know exactly.
let's look it up, guys.
Somebody
let's see
that,
what Google
like,
gives us. I'm not saying
is
that's
an
the best way.
Egyptologist.
I mean, to me, I
Really
watched
just
two
do.
YouTube videos, and to Jenera's point,
Right.
it's rooted in misogyny.
And then they go around like judging other people for not being Black enough and like that kind of thing.
Let's get this. Hotep.
for not being woke.
And
And
their-
see, that's
by
the
their
first thing.
definition,
That's the
yeah.
first thing that tells me you're not woke. Because a truly woke person
Would
Doesn't
understand
doesn't
why
go
it is.
around
celebrate other people.
acute. You know what I'm
Yeah.
saying? They don't do that. That's not what they do. Now maybe they
Right.
try to help you question things. Maybe help you whatever. They don't go around in a way that I used to see them, especially online. I used to see the
It's like a self-righteous kind of thing.
yeah,
The new
yeah,
hipster.
yeah.
Because what is the barometer for Blackness? Like, why is that the topic of all of your conversation?
Right. So then it just becomes the opposite of the whole point of the Pan-African.
It's really anti.
Kind of like similar to how I feel like the modern Christian church has now turned into the Antichrist. I mean, the way they operate, the way they are repelling people away. It's like I said, there's this mass exodus. Nobody wants to be there. I even know
value there.
Yeah,
If
even
the generation doesn't see any value there has to be
right.
this
And
because
and
they're
they
not
don't.
getting anything from. Like you were talking about, you just go, I guess, for the music.
The
You don't want to stay
experience,
for the message. It's like you could.
Yeah. Now I do
to your
stay,
point.
but I do stay, but I don't. Yeah, even like my son's grandmother is an ordained minister over there, and she even told me that over the years she's just, she said COVID was her excuse not to go back to church.
A lot of people feel the same way, so
Yeah.
I get it.
And COVID was the deathbed for
A lot of things.
we're driving around looking at real estate every day. Man, if
We need to turn these churches. We need to get this land. We need to. And that's how you know. And that was another thing I used to think sometimes when I used to see back when I was younger. I used to see like churches like being foreclosed on and stuff. I was like, that can't be God. God wouldn't let the church get foreclosed on. It's an industry. It's an industry that's now dying. And I know like my church back home, it's basically turned into a funeral home. All the old people every week, they're having funerals. Now they're still surviving because they had investments. They've got millions of dollars, but yeah, it's just every week. I talk to my grandmother, like, okay, who died this week? And there's no new life coming in. There's no
church shout outs.
Shout out to Bishop Cathedral and Bishop O.C. Allen.
Oh man, that's crazy.
Oh my goodness.
But yeah, that's where I go. And it's interesting too. Even before I started going there, I remember, and I've always enjoyed Bishop Allen. He doesn't. I feel like he teaches, primarily, the good stuff or whatever. But I can remember before I started going there, the good stuff. I mean, he teaches about, how to get through your daily lives and stuff like that. He's not necessarily teaching oppression. And stuff like that. But
okay, go ahead.
But I can remember though, before I started going there, I used to I had told myself a number of times I was going to go there. And a girlfriend of mine, she was dating somebody who went there, and I mean, she was going to stab me and twist the knife if I rolled up in there because she had a problem with somebody that went there. Now she claims to be this real spiritual person. She had a problem with somebody that went there, and it was going to be a problem if I went there. Kind of like that high school thing where if I'm mad at you, you got beef with them. And I was like, I don't have beef with them. Like
But that's a person problem.
Yes,
that's the individual.
But unfortunately, the church is made up of individuals. And that's what they are. And I know that for me, I've always wanted to stay connected to a church because it was something that I took comfort in after growing up, and I, like I said, I like the fellowship and some of the positive aspects of church. But every time I would get involved, you start to see all the drama, the BS, the fighting, I'm trying to jockey for position. And so for me, it just wasn't. It was more of a toxic environment than anything.
I just never fit in, no matter what church I tried to attend, even when I was younger. I never fit in. Even in Catholic school, we had to take religion, but really that was just memorizing. You had to pass a test, but it's
you just had to get through it.
Yeah.
What do you mean when you say that, though?
Well, because, as children, you're being taught, and I'm the one going, why? That doesn't make sense. I don't believe this magic happened. Or everybody else is just digesting it. And I mean, I'm 6 years old going, scientifically, this doesn't make any sense to me. And my son is the same way. He looked at it like, Mom, this doesn't make any sense to me at all. I don't even want to come here anymore. It makes no sense to me. Because he's extremely literal and scientific like I am. So if somebody walks on, you better explain to me how this happened scientifically. And why hasn't it happened again? Because that doesn't make any sense.
Well, I mean, the Dead Sea has so much, what is it? Is it the Dead Sea? It's so much salt content that technically you probably could walk across it. It's almost like, just like, have you ever been to the salt baths? They got you can go take a salt bath. You'd literally float. The salt doesn't let you sink. So scientifically, like, anybody ever watched the History Channel, the show Ancient Aliens? They explain a lot on there. They explain. I know. I love that show.
Let's pick some episodes and we can
discovered how scientifically the sea may have parted, and that Moses may just happen to have been there, or maybe not. But it's possible.
Okay, let's talk about
So
this.
you talking about you probably don't believe that story with the whole what is it?
I don't believe hardly anything.
What is it? Where he sticks
The Red Sea.
yeah, and then it
Yeah,
goes
that's
up like it
yeah,
splits, and then
that's
he takes his people across the ocean.
That was just like high tide or whatever.
Exactly.
It was
But
just.
it never happened again. So
And then the story got sensationalized with the, you know, all the extra stuff.
I've
I
never
don't know.
been one to take everything literally. So like I guess that was never a big issue for me.
We have to
But most
understand.
people do it.
But it is.
And I get that. I get it.
That's
A
what I'm
lot
saying.
of these things are mythology.
That's why I
Yeah.
never-
But see, that's the way I look at it. And like I have an aunt who's like because Jesus, and I'm like, oh, we can't talk. Because, no, because like literally, like I have like actual as an adult, I have real questions. And I'm like, okay, but why? Like, what's the when you talking about Bishop Allen and how he talks about like real world application, not just the Bible. I'm like, okay, real world application. How do I go about this? Like for me, walking through my daily life, and she's like, "Well, Jesus." I'm like, "Okay, you don't." It's like you said, you read the Bible. Like some people like read it to memorize it, but like it doesn't. They don't.
But you
the
know, for some people,
comprehension.
yeah. But you know what? If you think about it, and for me, I had kind of, I guess, an existential crisis when I finally kind of got out of some stuff. But you know, it really is more comforting to believe that there's some gentle redeemer that's going to come down and this friend we have in Jesus and like all this, you know, it's just, it feels better.
I get that.
It feels great, you know, so to have to realize that
That shit ain't real.
not for real, like
I think the biggest thing, it feels
every Messiah that has gone is supposed to come back and they never came back. I don't think we've had any that have returned as they
I think
say.
the biggest thing is that you know that subscribing to that gives the responsibility to the higher power. Like,
Mhm.
you do not have the responsibility to ascend and be a better person.
Mhm.
You just have to do the rituals
Yeah.
enough times, be a good person.
Or in the Catholics, come and confess your sins and then you'll be absolved. Yeah, that's true. That there's no accountability for anything. It's
or the
all
accountability
on,
is transferred.
yeah.
You know, you have some accountability to follow the commandments or whatever.
Oh, they made me this way. We're born sinners, so we're
Yeah.
never gonna be good. And that's not true. We're born with love. We have to learn the negative stuff. We're you know, when babies are born, they're not out there sinning. Like they're not our whatever you want to call sin, if you want to use that word. But they're not out there. You know, there's always that age-old question of, are we inherently good or bad? You know, are certain behaviors learned, or what do you guys think?
Yes.
Inherently good.
Guess what? Just yes.
I think
What do you think?
This is the nature versus nurture question, right? Both and.
I think we have. I think we're born good. I think that we all have the propensity to that. Like the whole thing is like when you look at good and bad, love and hate, they're not different things. They're the same thing, just on a different. They're on the same spectrum, same line, just different things. There's no point, you know, when you love or hate a person. There's no point where it's love or hate. It's just a little more of this, a little more of that. Like
But you actively chose good, though. Like we're born good, but yet we're on the same spectrum that seems conflicting.
Well, my perspective is we're born on the path to good, if we want to say that. And I feel that our experiences can either point us further in that direction or what we would consider on a different road.
Yeah,
So,
no, I believe. I mean, when babies are
good and
born,
bad's a hard
they're
one.
born. Oh, cooing and mommy and whatever. It's the experience. Like it's that first negative experience. Mama done left the room. Oh, mama didn't do
You didn't
this.
get
I can't talk, so I'm struggling now. I want something, but I can't communicate with you. So I'm struggling. Now I'm in this struggle. Now I'm, trying to fight to get what, learn and whatever. I just think that we're born good and that our parents fuck us up. You know what I'm saying? Like whatever your experience is as a baby, as a child, if you're nurtured, if you're not nurtured, if you're given the things that you want, if you're treated, you know how some parents, they got 10 kids, they treat them all the same, line up and do it, so
It's the military.
so you can, and similar to why you can have multiple children growing up in the same house with the same parents doing the same things every day that end up very different because they came here with different needs, different wants, different whatevers. But no, I do believe that we come here full of light and love. We're coming straight from the source. There's nothing, we're uncorrupted when we arrive here. It's the experience.
There is something wrong in their brains
Yeah, I have
that
to
they
say.
really cannot feel empathy or sympathy or.
But is that evil or is that just a birth defect? Because see, nature, see, we've gotten to a society now where we want everybody to live, we want everybody to be here. But nature doesn't say that. Nature expels and gets rid of people who are defective, okay? Animals that are defective. So we as humans have decided that no, we should all live, and now we're
And what I think that
kind of
is
paying the
we're
price for
playing
that.
God. Because we are a reflection of the Creator in our avatar body, I feel like now we have laws and we have rights to enact what we feel is correct, what we feel is righteous. You know what I'm saying? So when we either protect the animals, protect the endangered species, or we kill endangered species by cutting down trees, what we think is right. And unfortunately, now we're under the leverage of capitalism that forces us to do things in our best interest
or against nature.
for survival. We're the only society, we're the only species that has to pay to live here every month. Or
Well,
you know,
Maybe
I
in
just
currency,
think-
but
yeah.
in some kind of way, everyone
yeah, for sure. But you
I
can't
think
just
this conversation is hard because of
Yeah.
even how we define good and bad. And
Yeah,
what
that's
it
what-
means
that's
to
why I
be
said
like.
that, yeah.
I think I was going to say earlier, I read this book called Sapiens, which is a nonfiction book, but it sounds a lot like the Egyptian that you mentioned earlier, but about the evolution of just societies and empires, specifically in the rise and fall of different empires and how religion was used to shape that and how religion changed to conveniently like provide justification for certain laws. When they wanted to get rid of certain people, they became evil people. You know what I mean? When they wanted to get rid of certain behaviors to keep certain power structures in place, other things got defined as good or bad or lawful.
Yeah, I mean,
or
good and
unlawful.
bad is just our expression of I'm not having a good experience right now. I mean, because for me, you know, like you have people that go through major health crisis, right? They get cancers, they go all the way down, they're struggling, and on the outside looking in, or even to that person at the time, it seems like a bad experience. It seems like something bad that's happened to them. But a lot of times you see people like that, when they come out on the other side, they usually have this renewed thing for life, and they appreciate and they love better, they love more. So after you get through it, like when we're going through experiences, a lot of times we like to label them. Yeah, it is relative to time, but we label these experiences as good or bad, positive or negative. I like this or I don't like this, whether it's good or bad or not. And then after it's over and you retrospectively look at what happened and where you are now, a lot of times those quote unquote bad experiences are really positive experiences for your growth and whatever overall.
They may not be positive
but
within
go ahead.
itself, but maybe have a positive result.
Outcome.
I think you can separate those things. You can still have a bad experience with a positive result. That doesn't suddenly change what that experience meant to you.
So let me ask this, because I feel like, and this goes to one of my theories in the book, is that I think we have a overinflated expectation of what our experience is supposed to be here. You know, we want every experience to be positive. So anything that's kind of not at this top is labeled bad. Just like now, that's why you find so many people in the court systems, because you tipped over on my side of the property, you did this little thing, you disturbed my happiness, just a pinch, now I got to take you to court for it. It's like we're here with this I think an unrealistic expectation of what the experience is supposed to be, and that's why we often label things bad, because we think we're here for what? Why do you think you're here? What do you think the experience is supposed to be?
I'm still trying to figure that out.
Okay, right.
I have
None. Mr. Cartel, thank you for joining us.
Hey, how everybody doing? Sorry.
Mhm. What about you? What do you think? What's our experience? Exploration?
Yeah.
Just to experience life and all its everything?
Absolutely.
Okay.
I think I'm working toward being an optimist.
Mhm.
So that is my path right now.
And why do you think we're here?
To be here.
Just to be.
To be here.
To be. Yeah. That's a good. I like that. I like that.
That's like.
What do you say? It is. It's very Buddhist answer. I know. I wasn't gonna label it. I was like, yeah, that's a good answer.
I mean, this is one of the things I appreciate about Buddhism because of this concept of equanimity. And I think that one of the differences between Buddhist philosophy and a lot of other religions, not all, but a lot, is like other religions have this dichotomy of good and evil. And Buddhism doesn't see it that way. It's more of a spectrum. And it's also like, wait and see. I mean, it might feel bad.
And Buddhism
right now,
doesn't go
but
into.
It could be good. It could be good and end up with a bad result. You don't know. You're not supposed to know. You can't control that. Just be. You know?
And Buddhism doesn't go into a whole lot about higher powers and this God. You know, like it kind of.
You're in control, and your reactions to the world are.
You're not really. You know, it's not this celestial deity that's gonna come and, you know, play Santa Claus or punish you or bring you something. It's not like, I don't even like, I think that we are always, I think we're often on the wrong track when we, most religions, ancient texts, they personify the God power. You know, I believe God is a power, not a person. But we often have this, I think, misconception of how we got here, what happened back, you know what I'm saying? What had happened. And I think that's one of the reasons I do like Buddhism, because it doesn't go into all that. There isn't this system of crime and punishment from this power. It teaches you to really just go inside, to look into yourself, to just be, to meditate, to ask the answers that come back. Yeah, karma, and that's the thing too. And a lot of people miss.
Which is cause and effect.
Yeah, my book addresses karma in a couple of sections because people misunderstand karma. Like, to me, karma is one of the, or it's really the only universal law, the only thing that really is. And a lot of people look at karma as like this celestial punishment, like this thing that is, and it's not. It's just, it doesn't matter whether you're putting out good or bad. Like it's the balance of whatever you're doing, no matter what. And a lot of people don't understand that. Even when we would talk about, and we can go ahead, we always got to transition into topics on the foods we eat. But a lot of people don't understand that these symptoms, as we start to get older, the symptoms and the illnesses and the things that we have, it's not because we're getting older. It's because it's the karma of what we put in our bodies over 20, 30, 40 years. And there's a balance. There's there are, we're not supposed, I think most of the population eats probably 80% of things that are not meant to be eaten by the human body. And so there is a price to pay for that. Like it's,
and the biggest thing is that it wasn't available. So we've evolved over, we call thousands and thousands of years, and we have all this stuff that's just now being introduced. So if you look at all human race as one person, and 5 years old, 10 years old, 15, they've only seen, say, cauliflower. And then next thing you know, there's broccoli, green cauliflower. Your whole mindset is going to be completely shifted. So we look at stuff that comes off of a machine or a factory. All that stuff hasn't been even exposed or thought of, and we're never going to be able to evolve and catch up with science, food manufacturing, technology, all that type of stuff. So we have to understand the karmic balance that takes place in our body and what that looks like, as well as how to respect it. The main thing you just have to do is listen. We try to silence our bodies with, cough suppressants or, pain relievers, but we think pain may be a bad thing. A bodybuilder doesn't feel like that. They know as soon as they feel
that's
pain.
your warning system.
Right, but I'm saying afterwards, you feel the pain, you know that you're about to rebuild. You know you're going to grow in some form. So obviously in the moment we said associating good and bad it's given with the context of time. So whatever time period that you're in this hour, it may feel bad that I may have missed something. But when I turn on the news later and I found out there was a 12-car pileup on I-20, I may not feel as bad for going out and trying to do the work that I was going to do that day. So I feel like the best thing of Buddhism is that it takes you out of the conflict of trying to put something in a basket and figure out what's this. It's just experience. Just go out there, just explore it. And that's why I like what you said about just exploring. Traveling gives you a different perspective about why you're supposed to be here, because you see so many different ways of life and you're not constrained to what we're doing here every day. Getting in cars, social security numbers. the whole night. But it's a subscription.
Right.
As a citizen, as a member of the church, as a member of an organization, I'm not sure what.
I mean, there's a huge. I mean, we're part of my book addresses why it kind of answers the question of why I believe there's so much mental unwellness in the U.S. And we live in a country where even our homeless people live better than people in some other countries, and a lot of people from the U.S. don't even realize how the rest of the world lives. We think that this is it, until you start traveling. I'm assuming everybody here has traveled somewhere, been out the country at least once. Okay. So, but until you kind of done that, it's like
your perspective is limited.
Yeah, we're in this.
Your matrix is limited. Your veil is
it's the U.S. is like a lot of people, a lot of theorists say that this was an experiment, that we're all part of, because the U.S. is totally different from like any other country. I mean, like we're
systems, we don't count miles.
We're so different. Even the foods, like the thing that made me really start perking up and really like, okay, what is going on here is that when I would travel, and I did a lot of traveling, like with Habitat for Humanity to different countries to build. And so we were in a lot of times still developed third world situations. And even when I looked at the food, so we got Kellogg's here, right? We've got all these food manufacturers. I just noticed everything tasted different in other countries. Okay. Everything tasted a little different. Okay. So I'm like, okay. And then I noticed every time I would go to another country, because when I would go, I would stay, especially if I was going as far as like Asia or somewhere, minimum of like 2 weeks. After the first 10 days, I started losing a little weight. A little hair started dropping up. And I was like, okay. So I kind of knew, I started expecting every time I would leave the country, and I didn't even really pay attention to why, but I was like, oh yeah, I'm gonna leave the country. I'll lose a little weight real quick. But then I realized, okay, because the food that we have here, they're poisoning us. They're chucking it full of all this extra stuff. Like we have a little chart. It's like this side-by-side comparison of food ingredients of the United States and then the same manufacturer making the product with the same striped tiger on the front in another country, and it's got 2 or 3 less lines of bullshit. We've got all these colors and red 40s and singing gums and stuff the stuff that you cannot pronounce and that's not in your cabinet. Okay, so we've got all this. So it's like, as I've gotten older and really kind of studying, really just been around, I'm like really scratching my head. Like, were we really an experiment over here? I mean, they say Christopher Columbus and them rolled out of Europe and they came over here to start a new life, but really, was it really just an experiment they were doing over here? Because it's like, it's just like bizarro world. It's like the rest of the world is operating this way and cool. And, I mean, everybody's got issues, but here we're like, it's like everything's like the opposite of what it's supposed to be.
Opposite day.
And they're telling us all this, they get on TVs, and I don't even really watch TV anymore. I've kind of come to the conclusion that anything on TV is probably false. It's probably a lie of some kind, but you can trust the movies. The movies.
TV shows too.
The movies, I don't know, some TV shows, I don't know.
The
quality ones, but like the movies, like when you see, what I'm starting to notice a trend of is the things that you see in the movies, those concepts and those realities in the movies and those ideas
they're
are
so farther ahead.
Yeah, those are like coming to be real. And everything I've heard on TV and these shows and the news, I don't even we're not even going to talk about the news because I think we're all in here intelligent enough to know the news is some BS. Even though, shouts out to WSV because they put us on there, but they covered our story when we needed it. But listen, I will use the media if necessary to reach the masses. But
it's the only thing that gets some organizations moving. You can say that, hey,
it is.
Your student population is homeless.
And that's sad because even in the case
viral, that's when we care. Right.
Exactly.
Right,
For 2
right.
minutes.
But and that's the thing. It's like and that was the saddest part for me having to go after Morehouse College was that it was a really sad day in Black history because it was like you don't want to do anything. I'm not getting your attention because you want to do right by these young men. You're just concerned about the media attention, and you're just concerned about your image and your donations. You're not putting these kids first. So it's just
You're in compliance. Come on now.
right.
We're not gonna say your names. You know people.
I wanted to put my Medea rolling pin, like say compliance one more time. Like don't say compliance to me one more time or I'm gonna go off. But anyways, Mr. Carter, we're gonna put you on the spot because you were late. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you, guys.
We have been talking about a lot of stuff, but most recently people were kind of just giving a brief where you're at spiritually, kind of how you grew up. Were you raised in the church, forced to go, didn't want to go? Do you go now? Like kind of where you're at on that spectrum.
Well,
Is this
wide
right?
spectrum. Well, I grew up mainly, Christian,
Okay.
but I have Muslims in my family, apostolic,
Okay.
and of course Masonry, which is open-minded to free spirit.
And Masonry is kind of a religion for some people. It's a following. It's not labeled a religion. It's more of a fraternal organization. But
I think the biggest thing I learned in my intro to religion class, shout out to Winfred Rice, Morris did some good things, but what it did was it really wasn't studying religion, it was studying how to study religion. So first what we did was we took out the genders when we talked about deities. The second thing we did was we had to understand the origination of a lot of these things, and then we had to get some criteria. So a lot of different philosophers have different definitions for what a religion is. Some people believe being a democratic religion according to certain criteria. So if you say being in a band could be a religion if you do it in a certain way. So if you have certain rules in that band and it says that you must, live a certain lifestyle in accordance and respect to that system, then it could be considered religion. So I think that was a really interesting point that I learned in that is that cults obviously transition to religions, and then religions become lifestyles, and now we have the laws and the way that we experience the world today. So the separation,
and a basis for what we believe is right and wrong.
True. And even if you're not in the church, you're still, your values, your morals are still going to be somewhat reflective of the native, what do we call it?
Ideology.
Yeah, ideology. Mm-hmm. So, Masonry, do you have any?
Well, my book does kind of attack not necessarily the Black Masons because they don't know better, but the 1700 Masons that signed the Constitution and all that. There is not Prince Hall, but there is an indictment on not just the United States, but the Masons and some other groups for basically hiding this information or perverting the information in a way that doesn't allow the individual to, it basically keeps you dependent upon them. It doesn't allow the individual to find what they need to find and connect, with their own spirituality. So I think a lot of I don't indict anybody in the modern world because we're all victims basically. I mean, a lot of people follow things, they do things, a lot of times based on tradition. Oh, my mom and my daddy was of this, and my mom and my daddy was of that, and this is what they believe. Now this is what I believe, and what I challenge everyone to do is, not necessarily change to what I believe, but just examine why you believe certain things. Have you gone out there and explored what else is there to believe? Because 9 times out of 10, when the people they're trying to silence, the people that they tell you don't listen to them, those are the people you need to listen to. You know what I'm saying? Like, and so for me, I know when I got to college and started studying philosophy, it felt so good just to kind of open my mind, and I could just get me a clean slate and just start fresh with, okay, what do I believe? What makes sense to me? Because the truth of the matter is that there's 8 billion people on this planet having 8 billion different experiences. Okay, so you may believe something different based on your experiences, and that's your truth. That is the truth. You know what I'm saying? Or part of the truth of what's going on here. And same for me, and same for you, and everybody else. I think that the disservice of religion, again, is not allowing people to really go within, not allowing people to really
discounting the person.
Yeah, discounting the person for the collective, because and that's what causes, I think, a lot of times a lot of mental unwellness, because we're finding we're not feeling it. You know, we're not feeling it. We're trying to find where we fit in, and we're not feeling that. Like I had
you feel bad for it.
Yeah, and they're making you feel bad. Yeah, I had a friend of mine on a previous recording, and she was just like, you know, none of it resonated with her. Just none of it did. And then the person sitting next to her was like, oh yeah, I believe it, you know, and it's so, and it just like, even in here, you've never experienced it. Like I think there was a point in time where I never believed it was all true, but I wanted to believe in some of it. I thought it was a little potpourri, a little hodgepodge of a little truth, a little, maybe they skewed it some a little bit, but overall, I wanted to believe in this book, that this book was given to us by God, and this was our map, because it was easier. It's easier to believe in a map that's already laid out for you. Oh, just follow this map, than having to go inside myself and figure out what my map is, or you figuring out what your map is.
So to relate that to the map, let's talk about understanding your person. When you have to, you always say that know thyself, study thyself. What's the order?
Know that.
Disrespect. Okay, this is your platform.
Know thyself, and understand thyself, master thyself.
Okay, so to know yourself, you have to give context as to where you are. So when you're talking about mama this, daddy that, you have to understand that if a human, you are a culmination of your experience that you've had on this planet, but your DNA and your lineage is a culmination of the entire human race. The context as to what geographic location it came from, what they experienced in that time, and how they felt. Because you do transfer emotions, you transfer feelings and memories. So when you understand that, you have to take that into account when you're dealing with your shadow self, or you're dealing with the person behind the mirror. So when you're understanding yourself and mapping out what your guide is, you have to first understand where you came from. You can't start a map in the middle, you know.
Yeah, and understanding why you feel certain ways, like
right.
the whole puzzle. Yeah, because the whole slavery thing, that's a good point to touch on. Is that science has now proven, and I like to just bring up science because it's something that most of us can agree on. It's not just, this isn't just my opinion or what I believe. This is something that they've proven. But science has proven, you know, we carry trauma in our DNA. You know, a lot of people don't recognize it, good or bad. We carry trauma in our DNA. So a lot of the, you hear a lot of white people saying, oh, slavery was however many years ago, get over it or whatever. Well, we're not over it. I think it's 16 generations that it will carry. And a lot of people don't understand that. So understanding that first, that you're still carrying this DNA. You're not as removed as you think you are. You're carrying this DNA, and
it allows you to move with grace for yourself.
Yeah, you need to understand that's your starting point. You know, you're not starting in the same place as, I don't know, whomever, little Johnny and them.
Not experienced that because we're so diverse. Obviously, all of our parents or great parents may have not experienced the same thing, whether it was a plantation or whether they came from another country, whether they were black in Germany or whether they were black in China. You know, black people go to China, they seem like, oh my God, it looks crazy almost. But these are all different experiences that we don't want to say one is worse and one is the other. I really hate when we see, like, for example, say the black community wants to argue with the Jewish community, and they want to cite the Holocaust and they want to do that. But it's like, no matter what, we can't put trauma, we can't put experiences on a scale, a number, based on how many lashes you got, based on what type of beatings or what type of family you came from. It's all relative. So when you talk about homeless people in America, a lot of things we don't take into account with homeless people, we look at just on a daily basis. The only reason why they're surviving, they probably have some really tough DNA. They're probably, their parents, their lineage has probably been through much more, and they get, what do you call that? I said like spiritual calluses almost. Because as soon as your brain stops growing and stops trying to ascend, as we say, you're gonna die. As soon as people, get dropped off at the what do you call it, nursing homes, stuff like that. As soon as they no longer get, they just die out. But when people are living in their purpose, you see someone dying on their farm to the last day, still smoking a cigarette, still doing whatever they're doing. The reason why they're able to survive is because their body is in a mode of
tougher.
Yeah,
I mean, like that's like people like you look at people in the Middle East, like say Turkey and places like that. They always get bombed and shit. They have a energy that allows them to deal with that. Okay, they're used to it. Okay, if we over here getting bombed, we wouldn't even know. I mean, I don't even know what we would do. It's similar to there's an attorney I used to work for. He had this theory in court on why Black people didn't receive the same compensation as white people, because Black people were tougher. So the Black person that gets attacked here on Peachtree Street, it wasn't as bad for them as the little white person that got attacked, because they're just not used to anything like this. So that's something that I think when we talk about, it plays into the psyche, into the system, into
our perception.
And why we don't get the same equity in the justice system as some people do. But so anyway, another thing I wanted to touch on while we were talking about, I wanted to go back, and we kind of got off topic, but we were talking about the FDA. We were talking about food versus food standards and things like that, and how I think a lot of our memories, a lot of unlocking, a lot of what's clogged up in a lot of people has to do with the food, the foods that we eat. We, clog your body, clog your mind, everything's clogged, and so, one of the things that I know with me personally, it's been a journey with the whole food thing, what to eat, how should I know. For a long time, I just used to say to myself, okay, I just want to eat the way God intended. Like, I know that if I eat the way God intended, I won't go wrong. And I honestly believe too, I posted on my social media page, there was this scene, something on TikTok of a big fight that broke out at the Popeyes. Okay. Somebody was, it was somebody, I think the white girl threw some chicken nuggets across the thing at the cashier gal, and then everybody came out, beat her down. I got it on my page right now. Oh, it's good. It's good. Yeah. The white girl, she didn't throw it, and then everybody comes out and everybody's fighting, and and it was where's the music? It was the music for me. They don't put the Popeye theme music behind it.
Wow.
Yeah.
What was the question?
That's what I was okay, no, I'm about to tell you. Hold on. So I'm going to say this. I'm just going to put this out there. I don't see vegans and vegetarians cutting up like this. Okay.
Do they have the space to do it?
Oh, I'm sure anybody can cut up.
There has been fights of slutty vegan. There have been fights of slutty vegan.
But in general, like, it goes to for me, it speaks to, when I see stuff like this, it speaks to, they say you are what you eat. Mm-hmm. And, all these people out here fighting over this meat and everything. And to me, it just makes them savage. It makes people,
affects your cognitive.
I hear you. I don't.
It does. It does.
It
may not be, but when I see this, and I see people acting like this in establishment where this is what they're serving, this is the energy that's going on there. You know what I'm saying? It's not, so it probably isn't the best example, but it's
That's a reach.
It's the energy. But I don't see. I don't. It does. Mm-hmm. And I mean, would you said it was fights of slutty vegan? I didn't know.
There's got to be fights of slutty. I mean, people are everywhere. That's
well,
all.
the Slutty Vegan, their locations are very tiny, so it always looks full
People are
regardless.
always
It's
people are
actually a
always
good
out
market.
the door.
Yeah.
Well, I just have never heard about, you always hear fights breaking out, and food fights and people wanting to get their food.
Yeah.
But like the vegans, the vegetarian spots, they're a little bit more calm. They just wait in their line, like they
I'm
wait
sure
for their
there's some
food.
aggression
Like,
at the
I'm
store.
serious. I mean, I'm not saying that aggression doesn't exist, but it just, like, for me, sometimes when I think about these things, when I just
Analyze.
observe humanity, I look
Exactly.
at.
I think to make an analogy to what you talked about earlier, you were observing the different religions, right? You were observing the practitioners of those religions. You were saying that, unfortunately, especially the Black church, it doesn't look good from the outside based on the sum total. So although this is just an example of probably just two people that are just angry, the sum total, the energy around fast food spots or places that are serving a certain selection of items.
And what I wanted to get to was that certain foods that every food has a frequency, every food has energy and has a vibration.
Mm-hmm.
So when you're eating lower vibrating foods, you're going to have lower vibrating energy. You're going to behave in a lower vibrating manner. That's kind of where I was and that was just the most recent, like.
So do you think that's about meat, or do you think that's about low quality?
It's just low. I think it's just low vibration in general. Like, not necessarily meat, but meat is the lowest vibrating food. It is.
There's
I mean,
a scale?
it's dead. Absolutely, there is a scale.
I have no, I'm just. I don't
Yeah,
know.
no, yeah. There is a scale. See if you can pull up the. I think fruits are at the top. Fruits carry DNA. Those are very high vibrating foods. There's definitely a chart. Limes, I think, limes and mangoes are at the top.
Well, them shrooms
No,
got
we're
you
not.
high.
No,
Sir.
we're not supposed to be. That's the problem. That's what they've told us. We're not supposed to be. We're not carnivores. Our mouths, like, pull up.
I got the book.
You got the book. Get the book so she can see it. Our bodies aren't even set up. Our mouths aren't even set up to eat meat. That's why.
I've heard the exact opposite, that our bodies were not designed to eat fruits and vegetables, that we're designed
It's
to
true. I have heard.
That's the lies that they'll tell you. Get the book.
No, when I went to that Reiki lady was telling me, like,
The way your jaws
the
move.
different foods correlate with different
They say the same thing.
chakras
Your
and things.
you're not supposed to
but I didn't hear that meat part.
I'm not getting
Yeah,
into this
and
conversation.
meat, like, if you think about it, so mammals and animals, we decompose, right? Anybody that's ever been familiar with, like, the burial industry, we gotta get a casket, we gotta lock it tight, because as mammals decompose, those gases, all that stuff, comes out, they gotta keep them back. So when you eat meat, when you eat another mammal, your body does not digest meat. It sits there and then it continues to decompose. Or putrefy is what it's called. Yeah. And this is also why that dead flesh is also why a lot of people, as they get older, their teeth start falling. If you look at ancient skulls and ancient skeletons, all them, they got perfect teeth intact. Ain't nobody, they're not toothless and mouthless. And those people were eating fruits and vegetables.
Is
Go
it
ahead.
possible that, I'm sorry, go ahead, Jared.
No, I was about to say, I think it's also because how the animals are raised too, and what they're eating. Because I mean, I don't know if you've seen the videos where they're pumping into the chicken
Yeah.
in the store.
Yeah, well, they're not eating that. They're pumping that into them. Animals don't go against nature. What is it? A lion, you're never going to see.
Well, I was about to break that down. So
Go ahead. You go ahead. You're
when
good
we
at that.
Analyze the animal kingdom. When we look at to compare something like a lion, a tiger, a baboon, and things like that, we understand that they operate in what's most efficient. So the only animals that actually eat flesh, they eat it raw and they kill it themselves. There's no animal that eats flesh that has to season, cook, prepare, or use a tool. They're given the tools naturally. They have claws and they have a different set of anatomy.
That's not true though. Like, otters use tools in order to open shells and to eat. Like, they use
nature.
animals use
In nature, though. And everything they use is found
Without
in nature.
technology, you wouldn't be able to eat meat. You couldn't go outside today and go hunt an animal and then cook it.
But if I have
But they do
a stick
before.
and a rock, like, that's still nature creating
fire
the
is
sphere,
technology.
making it a tool and accessible for ancient humans to hunt. So I think I just got lost on the tools part. Maybe I'm hanging
Well, yeah,
on
what
the
I'm saying
detail.
is when you look at something like a lion that would chase a gazelle, they have the speed, the strength, and the ability to.
These are tools.
You said what?
Nothing. Continue.
Keep your tools.
Don't go there with me. Don't do it.
Mine is strength. So we have a
They
different
are.
strategy and approach.
Oh yeah. We're so smart now that we
Now
have food
and then.
manufacturing.
Yeah, the point is not what hold on, let me just clarify. The point is not what we can do as humans.
Yeah.
As humans, we can do whatever, we can make shit happen, we can change things, we can adjust and adapt. It's about what we were intended to do
How is that
originally.
not what we were intended to
Well, if
do
you look at the
originally?
length
That's
of the
part
gap-
Well, because you can look at the deterioration of our bodies. You can look at the damage that we've caused ourselves. That kind of tells you that it's not what we were meant to
Well,
do.
you
But
said-
let's let him finish his thought, and then we'll get back to the
Just
challenges.
to relate to anatomy too, here it was saying that the GI tract is a lot larger in carnivores, 65% larger, to be able to hold the prey. And their GI tracts are actually smooth, so that way no meat is left in there. It all passes through. And in our tract, is actually a lot of ridges, and that's why we get a lot of chronic constipation in meat eaters because it gets stuck in there. And that's why fruits and vegetables are the most optimal thing because when you eat fruit, it turns to water, H3O2, and it goes through your body and assimilates in a different way. Obviously, we know that meat and flesh decomposes over time, and that's why we get a lot of different symptoms or even spiritual symptoms that we were talking about, just being more aggressive. If you're eating an animal that has a lot of hormones, that's why we see a lot of even younger girls going through puberty a lot sooner just because they're eating chicken tenders and fries almost every day because there's hormones being pumped into it. It all goes in there. It all is getting digested. And when there were obviously civilizations that ate meat over time, but it was also in a spiritual manner. We understand the natives and the indigenous people that were on this land, even the bison, they would pray and they would, they would acknowledge the spirit of the animal before they ate it. I'm sure we pray over food for nourishment and healing.
As a ritualistically, not
Right.
really because we.
But no one really cares about where the chicken came from.
Right, nobody cares for the chicken.
Yeah,
Well,
and you
okay,
didn't know it yourself.
Here's
It's-
my question. I'm not disagreeing with you.
No, it's not.
But
It's not
like
about a
half
disagreement.
half
Whatever.
my family is vegan and half is not.
Uh-huh.
And obviously a lot of people
House
in my
divided.
a lot of people in my spiritual community are vegetarian or vegan. I'm just like we were talking about with the religious traditions and the spiritual practices. I'm just wondering if it's possible that some people are meant to eat meat and some are not. Some
Well, that's
are
what I was gonna
designed
say, too.
to and some
But
cannot.
talking
You know what
about-
I mean?
And that goes with eating. I haven't read the book yet, but eating for your blood
Blood type?
For
Oh,
your
yeah.
type of body.
I read that
Your
too,
body
yeah.
type.
Yeah, so when we talk about geographical location as well, when we understand that Africa is the motherland of all, life, we know that there was an abundance of vegetation. That's what was most natural. That's what we were able to use. But when we had people go out, such as to the Caucasus Mountains, they had a different energy about getting their resources. They hunted more and they ate a lot more meat. So they look different, even though overall we haven't evolved to do that. Obviously, depending on your DNA, you can't have different things that are optimal for you. So there's definitely no argument that every human is different. No one believes that any diet is most optimal for everybody. But when you understand human anatomy and physiology, there are certain laws of the universe that you have to respect no matter what, when it comes to what the karmic response is going to be whenever you eat something. So no matter what, we understand that soda, you're going to burp. The gas has to come out in some way. So little things like that are things that we just have to understand on a spiritual level and a physical level. So on the spiritual level, what you were saying was the energy of eating dead items overall puts you in a lower energy and more, cannibalistic. You want to hurt somebody. You see people like, are y'all familiar with the Liver King? Have y'all seen? So there's this guy that he has a niche, and he kind of just proposes everyone to eat raw organs.
No.
Yes. So he actually sells products. He sells I guess liver in a pill almost. So it's like you take an herb and you put it in a powder, you can put that into a capsule, right? You can take a drug and put it in a capsule, but he basically somehow was able to, I'm sure it's all fake, but yeah, he puts raw organs specifically for different ailments and just for people to take on a regular basis. So I'm sure it's all.
This is as a dietary supplement?
Oh yeah, but this is what he only eats. He's a carnivore. So when people are believing that that's the only thing that's possible. You have to start to question what the intent is behind it. And now we've come out to find that he takes steroids and stuff like that. I think that was recent. But you see him, and he's always he's super tight, and he has like, you know, his blood is pulsating at a very alarming rate. So it's just little things like that you can see. It's kind of like a trend. Obviously, I don't think every meat eater is a bad person, but when you look at overall the energy that goes into some of those rituals, because it is a ritual. What you eat is a ritual.
I think it's not to cut you off, but I think it's one of the things like, you know, as humans, we evolve over time with our environment. You know what I mean? And if you look at how our teeth are designed, I mean, it's designed to rip through flesh. You know, look at the fangs. These aren't.
We don't have fangs.
We have two.
You know what I mean? We do got fangs. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
Canines,
two.
fangs.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like, that's designed for meat, flesh, and then you have the molars, which is more designed, I would say, for, you know, plant-based food.
Mm-hmm.
So it's kind of like we're omnivores and herbivores. You know,
Right,
it's
yeah,
like
that's
a
why I wanted to
mixture.
share this chart with y'all, because it kind of goes into that. But obviously the predominant, you have two canines. When you look at something like a dog or a tiger, you see that those are all the teeth that they have.
Mm-hmm.
So you can see that we have the ability to consume it,
Mhm.
but overall we're still not there yet. So we just have to understand where we are on that scale, and it is a spectrum.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I'm saying? Obviously, we may believe that some white people, some Europeans from the Caucasus Mountains could have a higher rate of digestion and absorption of certain things,
Mhm.
but there's some people that, you know, I can't eat a pistachio or I'm gonna die. So, you know, it's little stuff like that we have to take into account. But this is a really good book by Dr. William Richardson. I met him the other day with Dada. Shout out with Dada. But yeah, it's just a chart.
Hey, Madada.
Just explaining the human anatomy, comparing us to carnivores and herbivores. But yeah, we are able to go in the middle, eat nuts, vegetables, fruits, and grains. But it does explain what the, oral composition of humans is in comparison to other animals. So I
it
was
goes
just,
back to the religion thing I was talking about, where everyone has their beliefs and who's right and who's wrong.
Yeah.
Because there's someone that has information using the same, you know, what is our mouth designed to do, what are our intestines designed to do,
Yeah.
and they will say the opposite. of what
Yeah,
it
people
is.
can always flip
Yeah.
information, but the physiology of it you can't really deny that part. Like
But
when you look
But
at,
I think her point is that you are saying the same thing that other people would say. It would be opposite. So I can't
Or come into
just
different
correct her.
conclusions.
Even going back to what you said about how you like to use science, because you can't deny science, but
well, no, you can. No, you can't. You can't. No, I didn't say you can't deny it. I said we all generally agree on most things. But no, you can definitely deny. So science is only good enough for its own. Science is like a baby. Science can only deal with its low level of consciousness. You know, science will, you know, if science can't measure something, it believes that it doesn't exist or not true. And just because you haven't created the device to measure it yet, doesn't mean that it's not true. But I do think that
device measures it differently, and now it's true for them. So you have all these people believing that science versus that science.
Right.
So it's
Yeah.
and there's no truth, like you said, there is no truth.
Right.
And like,
What
like,
is true?
there's no absolute truth. There's no
Absolute
absolute
truth.
truth. I do think that in some ways, like you said, we did evolve over time. And I think that in some ways there was an absolute truth when we were first created. Whenever that, like, I don't think we really are going to ever know when the first human came up on this planet. Like it's so far back, but I think that there was a intention at that time. And I think that over time there have been series of humans, I guess, if you could say. You know, I believe the Asians were a series, the Africans were a series, the white people, you know, these mutations, whatever you want to call it or however you want to label it, certain series. And that may be what you were saying, that some people can process certain things. I don't think that at a different rate. I think that overall it's more difficult. So for me, when I judge what's high vibrating, low vibrating, it's basically what's the easiest for your body to digest. What's the simple thing? And I know he breaks down the simple and complex stuff, you know, of our body. But fruit is the easiest thing to digest. You know what I'm saying?
So when we're talking about science, we're saying what we can measure.
Well, why can't you date to be? Are you not eating because your doctor doesn't recommend it?
Right, well,
because they want to prescribe you medication. But
Well, actually, mine does not. He goes to medication less. I actually want
Okay.
some drugs, but he won't.
You're in a better position than most
I
people.
might be going to a different doctor.
right, give me my dope.
But for me, as I've gotten older, and it goes back to the preservatives and everything that the food industry has changed, and I certainly wasn't caring about that in my 20s or my 30s. I would not tell you how old I really am. But my body.
She's probably like 80, looking like 30, right?
My body does not know the difference between a donut and a strawberry. So
sugar-wise?
Yes, sugar-wise. So
Yeah.
Your body has evolved over time as well.
I gain a lot of weight. But I prefer to eat the strawberries.
Yeah.
But I'm going to choose the strawberry or the donut today. Sometimes I'm going to have the donut. My body doesn't know the difference.
How do you know your body doesn't know the difference?
Because we did some blood work and we did some urine testing as well. And the weight that I put on, it doesn't matter if I'm going to eat a strawberry or a donut. My body holds on to it.
But what about how you feel?
Oh, I feel better when I eat a strawberry.
Okay.
But my body is going to say, I'm going to make you gain weight if you eat strawberries or donut.
But your body is how you feel.
Mhm.
I mean, regardless of the weight, I mean, the weight is one thing. The weight is something we all kind of
Right.
maybe
I
don't
feel-
like, but.
I feel worse with having more weight because I have too
Mhm.
much weight for what I should have.
Mhm.
I'm not overweight.
So are you eating too many strawberries?
I do eat them. I just-
Yeah, I mean, because the thing is, I mean, whether you're eating good or bad,
Yeah.
if you eat too much, it's still too much. Yeah. Go ahead. What are you going to say?
No, I was going to speak to her in her situation because we have to respect that no matter what. Because one thing that got me on my health and wellness journey was I became lactose intolerant all the time, and I used to eat cereal and milk every day before school. It don't religiously 2 bowls, 2 different types of cereal. It don't matter.
Refill.
Right. And then one day I'm almost throwing up. I'm almost, bloated. I can't even make it to school. I'm like, whoa. So what I understand, what you have to understand is that your body creates responses and it adapts to what you give it. So what it seems like is happening with you is that.
And just because we've evolved over time doesn't mean it's a good thing. Like we're having to counteract what we're doing to
Right,
ourselves.
It's a family history of diabetes. That's it.
Exactly. And I just wanted to say that I feel like it's important to take that into account when we look at science this, science that. That's why clinical trials is what we look at. We look at a large group of people doing one set of things. We look at another set of people doing this. But you have to understand where you fit into that. And
how you got to be that
right.
person.
The fact
what
that
were you doing before?
most Americans read on the 8th grade level, they're not going to read the whole study and understand what the real concept is and how they can apply that to their lives. You're just going to want to listen to one influencer, one person that tells you this is the way. And we try to definitely not do that. As the fraud department, we're here taking this time to uncover the truth and figure out what applies to us, what's relevant. So it's really dangerous, especially when it comes to health, especially when it comes to what you put in your mind or your mouth, whether it's religion, whether it's food, strawberry, or donut. It's all relative. So
and the big thing is to be able to listen, be able to understand your body, your own, because I know with me, sometimes I go to the doctor and they may be saying one thing and I'm like, and I've told the doctor before, no, I know my body and I know that this is what's going on. Your test doesn't show. Huh?
What the doctor said about me being a fever burner.
Oh yeah. So when he was a baby, he used to run fevers all the time. And I'd be taking him to the pediatrician and what's wrong. And a doctor just told me, oh, some babies are just fever burners. And I'm like, no, biology says if you're running a fever, your body's fighting something. There's an infection. There's something else there. But he just wanted to keep prescribing, oh, just take this, just take that. Well, I finally went to another doctor that was like, oh, his immune system, whatever. And so they recommended they do the cod liver pills in the little gel caps. Take one of those, bust it in some orange juice each morning and give it to him. And I did that for maybe a month, and he was never sick again. You know what I'm saying? He was never sick again. So it was very rarely do you find doctors that are really trying to heal the person. Like that doctor was able to help me heal his immune system and whatever deficiency that he had, versus another doctor that's just going to say, oh, he's just a fever burn, just give you a pill to treat the symptom and not so much. And so that's the only reason that's one of the things I typically, just because of the way doctors are trained. And I think he's a future doctor, but has decided not to go, I think, through the traditional route, but just the way that they're trained it's not about healing the body. It's about treating symptoms. And so I rarely go to a doctor anymore for anything, because all they're going to do is treat my symptoms. Yeah. They're not going to do anything for me long term that's going to, just like his grandmother, for instance, she just recently had a little bout with high blood pressure. And so she goes to the doctor. Now she's on high blood pressure pills. Okay, well, what was the thing? What happened? What are we going to do to try to, so you're just going to be on high blood pressure pills the rest of your life now? And she's like, yeah.
Well, we just have to understand when we look at the medical school track, when we look at what you go through in those 4 years, a lot of people don't actually know. 99%, well, I'm not gonna say 99%, but less than 5% of what their actual curriculum is diet. Most of it is about understanding the reactions of medications and treatments and symptoms. So the Western medicine is really good at dealing with things like bone, exoskeleton situations, surgery. We've gotten really good at that. But when it comes to chronic situations, we have the most chronic illness in this country. So if you want to say
cancers, diabetes,
right, we have all the
that
technology,
stuff.
but when it comes to what actually happens in the doctor's office, it is often misguided by the leverage of capitalism. We all see that nowadays. You just have to look at the stock market, the biggest
But that's done on purpose. And,
Right.
Yeah,
it's a business.
By accident, on purpose.
So if I can say, oh, I got a cure for this disease, then I'm going to lose you as a patient.
Because I need you to keep having the disease.
I need you to keep
Yeah, I'm
having
not going to tell you, hey, stop doing this over here, stop eating this thing, because that's what's causing the disease in you. I want you to have the disease so that I can
and that's
treat
why we
it.
feel like it's an experiment, because who would do that on purpose? So it's really interesting.
And the healthcare, when you look at the healthcare industry in other countries, it's not like here. I mean, it's like, you know, you have a lot of countries where everybody kind of gets their healthcare. And it's like, and that was the thing too, we realized that, because I was like, why can't the US, why can't we have free healthcare like all these other countries? But the other countries don't have the health risks that we have here. These other countries, like I was going back to what I was saying before about the differences, the same manufacturers are creating food A here, food B there. So food A here is killing us. So they're not going to give us free healthcare because, you know, we're over here dying. But the country that, okay, they're taking more precautions. They're a little bit more health conscious over there. So they you know, we can give them free healthcare. So it's like I still am I'm still like really trying to put it all together. Like, what the fuck is the US going on? What's going on here?
Like certain stuff
and that's the thing too, money. Yeah, because I was
over there, like ketchup, for instance.
Yeah, and when you look at the United States, when you look at who to, you know how they always say, you know, should I believe this or that? You got to look at what's the source, why are they saying it, why are they telling me this, and so you got to, in order to determine whether I can believe these people, these lawmakers, these politicians, or whatever, it's like, okay, what was our society created for? Money.
And if we look
So everything is done to make money. They're gonna lie to you to get you to spend your money. They're gonna so you can't. It's almost like you can't believe nothing. It is a business. I mean, it's. So that's one of the journeys I'm on, is really trying to understand, like, for real, were we really an experiment? Are we? Like, because all these other countries are making all these great laws to protect their citizens and make sure they're not being poisoned and everything. And over here, we're just, we just playing.
It's capitalism at its finest.
And it's the wealthiest, or one of the richest countries in the world. Not the wealthiest, but one of them. I think we're in the top 5, right?
When we look at what we
Yeah.
actually are founded off of,
Sort of.
we want to talk about the
Minus the
separation
debt.
of the colonies from Britain.
I don't want to go. That's a whole other topic. No, you're talking about that, but yeah.
Are we? Are we really in that?
One of the biggest things we don't remember.
I mean, Biden funded.
Money's fake. You know, we're printing money. How are we in debt? That's one thing I never understood. How are we in debt? We're printing money.
Just printing.
Yeah,
know,
drop of the hand.
And get mad at the scammers.
And they're the biggest scammers. They're the biggest scammers there are. That's wild.
No, but it kind of piggyback on the FDA situation. I was thinking, I don't know if you all heard it before, but it says that meat actually produces B12, the vitamin.
Mm-hmm.
And so I guess clinically and scientifically speaking with that, you can see where we would need some form of meat, because B12 actually stimulates our nervous system.
Can we
I
can't
believe.
get B12 somewhere else?
Well, yeah, I mean the animals get it from vegetation. Just
Yeah.
But when it comes to these letters and numbers that we equate as vitamins, it's just associating with minerals. So yeah, we can unlock certain minerals from eating the flesh of another body, but we have to also look at what source they get it from. So there's fact, like just like she was saying about the science, there's truth in these different perspectives. But a lot of times what we do is we only shine light on one area and we don't take into account the whole situation.
So that's fine that you can get B12 from that, but you're also getting cancer, indigestion, colon, like all this other crap. Like, and the thing is with animals, it's like anything you get from an animal, you're getting it because that animal has eaten some plant or vegetation. So like why have this middleman? You know what I'm saying? Like why have this middle animal in there? And then what they're it's almost like drinking water that's already been in somebody's mouth, like backwash. You know what I'm saying? Like why do you need to? I'm sorry.
It's filtered now.
Yeah, it's filtered. Like why would you even? You know what I'm saying? Like wait, but go ahead. What were you gonna say?
Okay, so even like the grass fed, when they say grass fed meat, like and somebody you have your own farm and you're raising the animals yourself, like you still think they shouldn't eat meat even though they raised it and they saw what the animal ate. And then
I mean, for me personally, when I look at the fact that when I look at that biologically we're not able to digest meat. For me, it's all dead flesh, and it's not, and it's low vibrant. There's nothing that I'm getting from it positive. I feel like the negative impacts of it, the inflammation, just all the other stuff that it causes. I think if you're gonna eat it, if you gotta eat it, then sure, that's the best thing. I used to love me some farm burger over here. The farm burger, because that was the one burger I could eat that I didn't feel heavy and weighed down afterwards. I felt like, I'd just eaten some fruit, no big deal. But now that I've stopped, so the thing is, just like what you were saying about your body adapts, your body evolves, right? So over time, I've eaten meat I was eating meat my whole life. So my body was able to, pretty much, thank you so much for coming. My body was able to pretty much, my body was able to adapt. But now that I've stopped and I've, pretty much detoxed from that, when I try to eat it now, I feel the immediate negative effects because my body is no longer, counteracting. It's like sometimes you don't even realize how bad you feel because you're in a constant state of feeling bad. You don't realize, like, because I know, like for me, I suffered from a lot of inflammation. So I thought it was just because, back pain, neck pain. No, it was inflammation from the shit I was eating. Like my back hasn't changed. I still have the degenerative shit in my neck, but I don't have to hold my head up. I don't have to, like, I stopped eating meat. All that inflammation went away. Weight dropped off. I don't, work out. Oh, this is another thing. I don't have to wear deodorant. Like I don't stay anymore. Like, I mean, I'm probably like 85% fruit now. And then I still eat like some plant-based stuff and then a little bit of sugar. I'm still on the processed sugar a little bit. I haven't quite given up my chocolate chip cookies and stuff. But I've seen like, and that's the thing. So like for me, there's nothing now that a doctor can really tell me, unless I break something or, it's something exoskeleton, there's nothing a doctor can tell me. I know my body now. Like I've lived with it, 44 years. I've detoxed from some stuff and then I've tried it again and like kind of played like, cause even when I stopped eating meat, I never really swore off meat. I was just like, every now and again. Once you stop doing certain, like your body gets so used to, just like when you do drugs, like if you've ever done drugs, there are people who do drugs, like the body is used to process, the body can process it, it'll keep processing it. And then you build up a tolerance. So a lot of people have built up a tolerance for meats and the things that aren't necessarily the best for us. But once you stop and then you try it again, then you can really evaluate what it's doing to your body, because when you're in a high tolerance mode, you don't really know. I know, like for me, like I go when I smoke weed, I smoke a lot of weed all the time, my tolerance goes up. So I can smoke, but if I stop for a while and then I hit a blunt, then it's like I can't hardly stand up straight. So, and it was the same thing with meat. So once I completely detoxed my system, I was able to really evaluate for myself what my issue, and there were a lot of things that I had no idea were affected by what I was eating. I thought it was something else, or I've been told it was something else, but I'm starting to believe that every single thing, every problem we have, even our hormonal imbalances, our bad energy, our bad days, it has to do with what we're putting in our body.
Yeah,
Like,
science
all
behind
of
they
it.
call it the gut brain. Like,
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, he did a podcast on that your gut is your first brain. Absolutely.
Right. They tell you that well, you refer to this as your brain, and you refer to this as your gut. You think this is just your engine that just processes things. But when you understand the connection between mind, body, and spirit, for example, when you get the butterflies, the first place you feel it is here. Mm-hmm. Your body is where your eyes reflect an image, such as a pretty girl or a guy that you like, and then your gut microbiome, which is just bacteria. You have more bacteria in you than cells. We all know that now. We're still trying to understand how that relates, and that's research I'm actually interested in. Hopefully, I can get my PhD one day in that. But when you look at the reaction, this gets alerted first, and whatever energy state you put yourself in on this level, you are able to translate that into your mind. So that's why, Muslims, they practice fasting so much, because once you separate from something, you're able to really analyze what it does to you. If you're always around that girl, you don't really understand how envious she is, how toxic.
That's a good point. Separating.
It's just separation.
So like for me, when I
separated
separated from food and detached from a lot of different things, I was able to
I think we
see
can lead the people with that.
Separation
is not, separation isn't the worst thing, definitely. Mm-hmm. Because it's, looking in the mirror, you're never really able to see yourself. That's what you said. And you're never really able to see you and your experience until you're able to abstain, I guess we would say, from pleasure or even from regular things. You did a communication fast a couple times last year. Little stuff like that really goes a long way. So
yeah, my communication fast was where I just I didn't talk to anybody, no text, no calls, no TV, no phone.
Just stuff we take for granted.
Just a day, and I don't like to call it honoring the Sabbath, but I do, like, on Sundays, I like to just do a fast from the world. Just like everything, just don't do anything that has to do with, I can leave I leave the house sometimes, but I try to just be. Just don't focus on anything out there. I don't worry about what's going to happen Monday, what happened last week, I just detach from everything. I try to not get on the phone. I try not to even talk to people about anything. I even tell him, he's on my phone 4 or 5, I don't know how many times a day. We're on the FaceTime, and it's like, okay, I'm doing my fast, so just let me be, for the day. And it's a really, really, it's not easy, because the random texts that come in, you don't want to necessarily ignore people and whatever, but it's so necessary. Like like you said, you'll never understand something hovering within it. You've got to step outside of it at some point, and try to see the bigger picture. Because that's the thing. It's like when you're in something, you can't see the whole picture because you're inside of it. You got to somehow come outside of it and look back in. And that's why I feel like traveling is so important, because and that's what's helped me realize what's going on here in the US is that once I left the US, it was like I started realizing, hi, this is a private event tonight.
No, that's
they're with you.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, no problem. So when I left the US is when I was able to kind of look back in and realize and start seeing this bullshit that was going on. You know what I mean? Like, it's just, and it's wild. And I wouldn't be surprised. There's no shortage of experiments on at least African Americans. They've always been experimenting on us. So is it too much of a stretch that the whole country was an experiment? Bring the Africans over here, and we'll start this big experiment.
Is that we think that we just separated from England because we wanted to make money and colonialism, all that.
We didn't separate them. They sent us over here. The English people.
once we got here, once we declared independence, we had to declare something. But the main reason was because they were talking about abolishing slavery in the islands, and we didn't want that here. So they didn't talk about that being a reason, obviously, when we go to school and stuff like that. But that was a big reason if you look into the history, that we ended up declaring our independence and trying this thing out, dehumanizing people, stripping them of all their identity and using them for free labor. So,
Yeah, because that's the thing too. Slavery, I mean, every race of people, every group of people has been enslaved at some point. But with us, they kind of took it to another, like that next level. It was like generational. A lot of people were enslaved where they were. They weren't separate. They were enslaved, but they still knew who mom and daddy was. They knew where they came from and who enslaved them and whatever. They weren't necessarily separated from their whole everything and
continent.
Yeah, and then the language and all of that. But I think there's enough podcasts on that topic. We can beat that horse to death. But anyway, is there any last thoughts? Or I really have enjoyed the conversation today. Any last thoughts, comments, questions that we can maybe talk about next time, or things to?
I think because I'm on my journey to be an optimist, I will circle back to your pertinent statement that we carry trauma in our genes. I think it's important to remember that we also carry healing in our genes.
Absolutely. You think? Any last thoughts?
Yeah.
It
was a great time.
Yeah, I really enjoyed it. Anything?
I'm gonna do some research.
Yeah, and like I said, I'm trying to do this often. Typically I've only had one or two people with me each time, but I kind of like this group. I really like. I wish that they hadn't had to leave so early, but yeah, I really enjoyed this conversation. It's been good. It's like usually I like the conversations where other people have good things to contribute. I don't like necessarily talking the whole time myself. So.
Well, I'm gonna definitely do some research on that B12. Because they say we can't get it from plants.
Where else can we get
They
B12?
say we can't get it from plants.
We can't. Okay. Where can we get?
What did Dr. Sebi say about
that? They say that about protein. They say we have to get our protein from meat, and that's not true.
Also, that's the other thing about protein. Protein is in the blood, but
Everything's
you're not the
cooked
liver king, so you're not eating it raw. But you gotta be cooking it out. So unless you're eating your steak raw, you're not getting protein from it at all.
And when it comes to when we understand what proteins are, from a scientific perspective, foundationally, a protein is just a selection of cells that have a specific purpose, right? So whenever you add heat to anything, it changes its composition, even vegetables. So we don't want to just talk about one part of it. When you're talking about should someone eat meat if they watched it grow up and all this, it's the same thing with when you look at organic versus non-organic, there's a risk factor with anything, especially in this lab experiment that we're experiencing. So when it comes to pesticides, that's a significant risk when you're eating fruits and vegetables. There's a different risk when you're eating meat. So you just have to understand it in context. But
so is B12 naturally found in our bodies?
B12 it's naturally found in animal foods, as we see here, but it forms red blood cells. So when
because if it's already in our body, are we depleting it and we need it, or
so when we get minerals, it's a reaction that takes place. So what he's saying is that when you eat meat, you get a certain aspect of the animal that allows you to create B12. So when you get vitamin D from the sun, you're not actually getting it from the sun. What you have is melanin receptors on your skin and in your eyes, your pineal gland, that allow you to convert sunlight into vitamin D3. So when you see white people
come on, Pastor. Okay. Tell us about it.
Vitamin D3 supplements, you're not actually getting. It's not a natural form of the vitamin. Whenever it's in a capsule or it's in a form that is, not native to our being. So we have everything we need to unlock what we.
Okay, this gotta be a topic.
Yeah, we're gonna go back. He's gonna resurge B12. We're gonna have the whole thing on B12. We're gonna trust and believe. But anyway, we're gonna cut off the stream now. Feel free to get some more snacks, get some more juice, some wine, whatever you want to get, and we'll wrap. Okay, what do they say on set? Cut. Yay.
Good, yeah, Woolside.
Good stuff.
This is good.
Yeah.
Thank you guys so much for coming. I
Thank
really
you for
do
having
appreciate it.
us.
Yeah. So you guys will be on the little thing from now on. If you